Pledge of allegiance. So if everyone please stand, remove your hats. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Here's that number. I'll try to get Dr. Vance on the phone here. I don't know if I can or not, but I'll try.
Call the right telephone call. You may have to call Cam.
Huh?
You may have to call Cam.
This is his cab, I think.
Push your button, make it louder. Hello. Here now?
I'm here.
All right. We have just begun the meeting by saying the pledge and just now fixing to call the meeting to order.
All right, thank you for calling me. I apologize for not being here.
This session of the Lincoln County Commission, special session of the Lincoln County Commission, March the 10th, 2010 at 6 p.m. is now called to order. Members present: Charles McCann, President; Charles Vance via telephone; Thomas Ramey.
Being a special meeting, we'll try to follow the intent of the meeting, why it was called, because this, last week is what. Before we get into the meat of the meeting and why it was called, I think it's trying to get my own self in the understanding and what's going on and trying to think that all of us has got a certain responsibility. We've got the press here, they got a certain responsibility to Lincoln County. Sitting here as commissioners, we certainly have a responsibility to Lincoln County. And of course, our 911 people, our emergency people, they have a responsibility to Lincoln County. And all those people that I've just mentioned really are paid by some way, but we still have a responsibility just because of the job we have, or because of by living here, just by wanting to make our county better. But all our firefighting people, I look at you as extra special because you're volunteering your time to do something in your particular community to make it better. Which we all know, if you make it a little bit better here, a little bit better here, it makes it all better. And that's Lincoln County. I think we have to, try to always keep that in mind. And the other night when we started talking about this, I thought, well, we got a problem, and what is that problem? I guess in my thinking, it's communication. Now, communication may have too much of it, but usually it's a lack of communication, and I've always been told it's not communication unless somebody says something and somebody else understands it. Just because somebody talks doesn't mean it's communication, but it has to be an understanding. And I try to think about, because I take this thing as serious as can be, that if one piece of our county is not working, none of it works as well as it should or could. So I think that as I looked at it, tried to think about how we're going to deal with this and make sure that we've addressed the issues and come up with something. Well, in my opinion, I still believe that it's communication. Now, it could be communication on the part of the commission. Maybe we haven't communicated well enough. I know we make an effort at it, but maybe we haven't done a good enough job of communicating with all the people, whether it be the volunteer fire departments or whether it be the 911 center. Just one of those things. I think that you have to look at all aspects of it. And I think the only, probably the only group in here that's communicated as well as it can be is probably the paper, because they print stuff as it happens. And so I think that the rest of us probably need to think, well, is there anything we can do on our part? Some people may have more to do than others, but I always believe that sitting here as a county commissioner, that our job is very, very important. And it's important to everyone that lives in Lincoln County. And it's certainly important to try to communicate that information and whatever those things are that we want to accomplish. Sometimes it may not be the most important thing, but it's still what we think. But I think it comes down to something like this issue here. We all know, I believe, and will agree, that the people of Lincoln County, they want us to do the best we can, and they want us to have good volunteer fire departments, because I take that message when they vote. I realize that people get out and work and make that happen, but when they vote to provide the levy and pay taxes to have these things, that tells me something pretty strong that this needs to happen. And it doesn't happen unless people stand up and do some work and get some high-skilled training and do what they love. So I think it's very important that we leave here this evening with the thought in mind that we all have an obligation to see that we have proper communication, and that we have our volunteer fire departments doing what they can to make their community better, whether it be some type of life-saving skill, or it be, you know, putting out fires, or we're just having the building open for a community. Whatever those things are that makes the community better and what people want for their community. And at the same time, I know that we have a good 911 operation, and I know that we can always improve and make it better. So I've had conversations with Alan on at least 2 occasions, and talking about, you know, what the issues are as I see them. And I've tried to put down here as an agenda type thing. It doesn't have to be, because the last thing, you may want to start at the end and start with other issues. But basically, I tried to take down from my notes the other evening some of the things that was talked about. And I immediately, when I went home that night, got on the computer and put those into a letter and sent it to Alan and to Commissioner Vance and to Commissioner Ramey with what I thought the issues were and what the plan was to meet here tonight and talk about these. So that's where we're at, and hopefully that as we move through this, I'm going to ask Alan to be he may have other people, I know he's got some other staff here, to be the person on spot to talk about the issues and just work down through those. And as we do this, if there's something that you know, I ain't asking you to agree with, but something you don't understand, because my number one thing is to communicate. So if we're trying to get the message out there, whatever it is, then if you don't understand that, let's just raise a hand, we'll address it and further clarify, or sometimes, you know, when we try to do something, sometimes we make it even worse, but we muddle the water too much. But our goal here this evening and is to do that, because I want to leave here this evening knowing that we give it our best to do what is best for whatever position we hold here in this county. And all of us hold one position, that we're citizens of the county. Now we got 1 or 2 guys here that's not citizens, but mostly everybody in here are Lincoln Countyans. But we, you know, that's going to be there. So we just need to do everything we can to get this resolved and move on, because I know that it can be. So at this time, I'm going to ask Alan, just looking at the agenda, one of the issues come up in some of the, I don't know, Jim was the spokesperson on most of the stuff last week, but I have down personnel on call. I don't remember exactly what the issue all was, but it seems like there was some confusion about whether we had personnel on call that could make decisions or could get things done like they should be, or they, you know, I know we got people down there, but whether it's the right people or people with authority and things like that. If, Jim, if you would want to state what that issue was so that we'll know for sure that I won't misrepresent that. And Al will know what we're going to ask him to respond to, whatever. And if there's any of these that don't need to be, let me know, but I just.
Yeah, the comments that were brought up in the association meeting prior to last week's commission meeting was concern regarding the supervisory personnel on call and on duty at particular times. But more importantly, the amount of time that there is no supervisory personnel present. And that was part of the concern. And I know some people were part-time, some people were, you know, some of the supervision works a different schedule. And it seemed to be the consensus among the fire service that seemed like the majority of the time, if a question or a decision had to be made, there just wasn't a person empowered to do that or readily available by call to make that decision.
Alan, you got any response to that?
Are we
Pull the podium
referring
out if you
to,
want.
are we referring to 911, or are we referring to emergency management, or both?
I believe it was both.
Well, there's no doubt that I am the director and I am the department head, but when I am not present, Mr. Thomas is empowered to make those decisions, and as far as the emergency management or 911, Geneva falls in line there also. We have 3 people deep, and I think that there was some concern, you know, what happens if Alan is gone and all of us are entitled for vacations and trips and so forth, and what happens if I'm gone and the other 2 aren't there, or what the situation is. We had to prepare a continuity of operations plan, and that's something that we addressed and we looked at, and I will assure you that this isn't the first time an OES director's taken a vacation, or the deputy director wasn't there, or the OES director was flooded in, or his house was wiped off the foundation during an emergency. So there are mutual aid plans in effect with the state, and it's very routine that in the event that the emergency services director is unavailable due to a death or an accident or whatever the case might be, that through the mutual aid with the other counties, other directors are sent in by the state to take that role and do that. Several of my counterparts in other counties have spent numerous weeks in southern West Virginia during flooded situations in other areas. I feel confident that that plan would have worked had there been a widespread problem. Maybe everyone was not aware that the OES director that you were dealing with might actually be an employee of Webster County or Ohio County and come into Lincoln County to assume those duties under a threat of an emergency or a disaster. But theoretically, that is the way it works. During the 2004 flood of the Ohio River, we sent an employee to work in Wheeling, and he worked in Wheeling for a week. And so the counties do share resources, and the counties do share resources back and forth. Now, on the other hand, I am pretty much available 24/7 when I'm here by cell phone, and if somebody needs something, it doesn't matter what time of the day it is or what time of the hour it is, and several of you I'm on the phone with on the weekends and after hours. So I think we're covered maybe a lot better than some people realize. But there is the discussion. We will be having some additional movement within our staff, some retirements, some people leaving, and we're going to look at addressing those situations and look at maybe grooming some additional people over the next few months to take some of the role as an emergency services director and handle some of those roles when I'm not available, or if I need help when I am available. But unfortunately, most of the volunteers in here, if I'm unavailable and we have a catastrophe in the county, you're all busy enough wearing the hats that you already wear. If somebody wants to step forward and say, I'd like to be groomed for that position to jump in there and help, then we're more than willing to take that assistance. But like I said, there are several fail-safes in the system where other county directors will come in here and assume the responsibility if we do have a catastrophic event. And I think one thing that came up that I wasn't aware of until I spoke to Jim last night was that I was gone, Jack was in Huntington, and Geneva was in the office. But I think he spoke with Geneva, and Geneva was sick that day, and I think he maybe had some concern that she wasn't going to be with us very long that day. And I think his concern plummeted from the fact was what was going to happen if she had to go home and we were left with the top 3 people in position. So
And Geneva, we referred to, just for the record, Geneva Wiley.
Geneva Wiley, our chief dispatcher. So that would generally be the chain of command, and normally we wouldn't have all 3 people out of commission at the same time, but there's not to say that we all don't get in the vehicle together, get down the road, and all of us get killed at one time either. So there has to be a clear line of succession, and that's something that we've worked on for the last couple of years with the state as far as establishing a continuity of operations plan for our operation. And I think part of it was an illness and the fact that we had some situation, but it's probably not as bad as what maybe was envisioned, because there are some backup plans in effect.
Let me just ask the question, just for clarification. What you have said sounds good to me, but again, back to that communication. Has this been, is it a written plan? Is there a written procedure? Is this communicated to the Fire Association or those people who might be called in case of emergency? Do they understand this or should understand this, or has there been effort made to make sure that that's been communicated?
We did our last revision of our COOP plan just a matter of a few months ago, and part of the revision of that was training of our local employees. Now, do every fireman need to know what that line of succession is? Probably not. But our staff needs to know what it is inside and out, so that when you call a nighttime dispatcher, the nighttime dispatcher looks for who's on call or who to contact, and that person is not available, then who to contact that to. And yes, that plan is in writing, and that plan
So your
has to
staff
be.
down there, whether it be OES or even when you call into the emergency center, if they call.
All of the staff has not been trained on that COOP plan,
But if,
not at this
but the
point.
call came in and you were out of the country and Jack was out of touch in Huntington, Geneva's ill at home, whomever was on the phone line when he said.
It would be the next thing. It would be just what happens in the fire service. The next senior operator or the next senior person assumes.
You believe then, are convinced, and I want to know that the system would work, the procedure would work, the way you've got it set up. There should be communication going, and if there's an emergency, whatever that emergency might be, someone there on duty at that particular time, whatever that might be, would know what to do or how to get a hold of outside help or how to deal with that or how to get a hold of.
I would think so, and after our discussion today, and I don't know that everybody realized that the mutual aid agreements exist between all of the counties for personnel. And if we find ourselves in a situation in emergency management or in dispatch, those personnel can come in from another county and assume a lot of those responsibilities and assist us. And I'm not even sure that you were aware of how that worked within the state plan, but that's part of the overall state emergency services plan
No, I said,
to allow for that to take place.
I said as a commissioner and as a citizen, and I just, in my thinking, all I gotta do is call the number. When somebody's gonna answer down there, and I say, I've got this situation, what am I gonna do? And they're gonna say, calm down, here's what you need to do. We have so-and-so available, we'll get a hold of them, and we'll deal with the situation. And I think all of us want to be reassured that we have that in place.
Well, and this has brought something to my attention, and I'll be quite honest with you, and some of the other counties have started a procedure that if you've got an issue that's emergency management wise on the weekend, you call the center and then the person that's on call handles it. You know, generally all of those calls go to me 24/7 from the dispatch center, and quite frankly, I'd like to have a break sometimes. And I think that maybe we need to, by by virtue of that, create an on-call list within the center from an emergency management standpoint, whether it's me or Jack or Geneva or someone else that steps up to the plate, that we need to have an on-call list that, just like the magistrates do or the deputies do or somebody else, that's the person that's called front line. And then if that person has more of an issue or can't handle it, then obviously they're welcome to call whomever on the staff they need to, but there may be a person that we need to assign on an on-call basis to handle that. And I'm more than willing to do that if you think that would be.
Well, and, yeah, I just think we have to, take this opportunity and, there may be some suggestions from the audience how that may happen. If they do, I think that I would be willing to be the recipient of any written comments and procedures, how that it should be done, and I'll make sure that that's delivered to Alan and put into some type of policy and dealt with, because I think it is important, and I never gave it much thought. I just always assumed there'll be somebody there and they'll take care of my needs. And I believe that's probably 99% correct, but may not be 100%. But if we can improve, since this issue's come up, then we need to improve on it.
Well, there's times that Jack and I have been out of town together without any question. And should we allow, sometimes it's necessary for that to happen, but at the same time, if that happens, there probably needs to be a clear-cut policy on who assumes those roles until we get back to the county, whether that be you or me or somebody else in this room that assumes that position on behalf of the county until we do get back.
I think we need.
And I won't argue that.
And we got a question here.
I think you made a statement there that it's not important that every firefighter knows who's in charge or whatever, if I understood that correctly. As being a chief, it's important to me that I know who's on the other end of that phone. It's important to me that I know who's in that comm center. No matter what kind of issue that I may have come up, I need to know who's in charge that I need to talk to.
And I agree with that.
I
fully.
was under the understanding for the last umpteenth year that we had a fire coordinator and never found out till the last couple of days that we didn't have a county fire coordinator. Is that true, that we do not have a county fire coordinator in Lincoln County?
Jack Thomas used to be.
Used to be.
He's not now?
I don't know.
See, this is where miscommunication, we're not finding out this stuff.
Well, but I think that's why I think it, while we're here.
Right.
It seems to me like we need to, it's just one of those things that you hate to have it under an adverse situation, but whatever is delivered to you, if you can see that you can grow and improve from it. I think what you're talking about is important. Yeah, and somebody brought that up before, that, Jack was, but not now. And there's a couple of issues that will come up again here before the evening's out that Al and I talked about today, trying to find out, is everybody on the same page, and do we know what to do? Well, we know it's not right. There has to be some improvements.
And Chief, when I made this statement, I don't think it's important that every firefighter knows who's in charge or on call at that specific point. I didn't mean that it's not important that you know. I don't think that it's important that all 400 firefighters know that it's this person's week to be on call and that person's week. Obviously, if there's a problem in your community or within your department, they're going to contact you, and you're going to contact the 911 center.
There'll be a chain of command in each place.
Right.
Obviously, you need to know, and you need to know how that plan works. But it's not important for me to know the exact operating of every firefighter within your department, right?
Well, I think the point's well taken, that there's a loop you're missing in making this thing work, and we know what that is. Yes.
Al, would there be any reason why, for security concerns or something like that, we could not post on your website for the center the continuity of operations plan whenever it be reviewed? People have a little bit of an idea.
I think, we discussed this today internally, about applying for one of the new grants that's coming out, one of the Homeland Security grants, and further developing our website. To have that plan open to the public, I have a problem with it. To have that plan where you as a fire chief or an assistant chief can log in with a password and download that document in a PDF file, I think that's a great idea. But in order to get a website to do some of those things and talk about some of those things, it's going to take some outside work and some outside finances to make that happen. So I think that's probably a good idea to make it available to everybody in this room but do we need to make it available to everybody so that, if
I
we have a-
realize when you're dealing with dispatching law enforcement, you're dealing with homeland security issues, that there's certain things that are probably should not be put out for public consumption because it would make it easy to breach or similar kind of thing.
And there's things in our continuity of operations plan that if the paper wanted to see it, I'd cry that it was exempt from FOIA regulations, because there are some security issues and there are some procedural things that are done within our center to switch 911 calls and to route to our backup center and do some things that really, for the safety of the county, don't need to be made available to everybody. So I have no problem with sharing it with the right people, but to share it openly on the website, you're also sharing it with everybody all across the world too.
Mr. Moore, did that answer your question on this? Anything else on this issue, Jim?
Alan, I'm a little confused. Let me get this straight here. Jack Thomas is not the deputy 911 director. Is that what you're saying?
Jack Thomas is the Deputy Director of Emergency Services.
Okay. Because on the website, it says listed under Lincoln 911 employees. He's listed second between you and Geneva. But yet, I've been under the assumption that he was the deputy director of both organizations.
Well, I think without any doubt, the lines are very, very gray within our organization sometimes, but on a day-to-day basis, Geneva reports directly to me for 911 issues, and Jack reports directly to me on emergency services and other issues. So there are times that Jack may assist or help with a 911 issue, but as far as the day-to-day operations of the 911 center, being Deputy 911 Director, he's never been officially given that title or that responsibility.
Is there a written line of staff published as to, say, Stockton County Commission, Alan Holder, Geneva for 911, OES? Where does everybody fit in? If there's not, maybe we need to do that.
And I think we probably should clarify that. And it comes down to I'm basically wearing two hats as 911 Director and Emergency Services Director. Now, it's done in probably 40 counties across the state where the person is one and the same. But there are many jurisdictions, if you want to compare us to Kanawha County, where it is two different people. In Cabell County, it's two different people. So we probably need to clearly define that, and I think I probably need to get some direction from the county commission on exactly how you all see it, because it was really never, as far as being outlined and directed to us, it's probably never ever been done.
Well, it's just one of those things that I think one of the conversations I mentioned today is that we've sort of mutated to where we're at now, just based upon when we started and how things happened in Lincoln County. I wasn't part of it, but I know a lot of people in here were. And it's gotten different, it's gotten bigger, it's gotten better, and maybe more complex. But it definitely is time, I think, that if we can establish something that shows a better picture of what we're doing and who's doing it and who should be backed up and all that. If we could do that in the way of some type of diagram, even bringing in those other counties and state people who would help us in emergency, I'd like to be able to see that on a flow chart type thing. It says, here's here, and if this doesn't work, dotted lines there, here's what happens, this is not in place, and who is in these boxes. If there's nobody in those boxes, put a box there, empty. And that would tell us have some more dialogue with the people we got here and see if we can't come up with some way to fill these places in to make the communication work better.
Well, and let's face it, there may be a time when that line of succession goes 3 or 4 people deep. It may be one of the fire chiefs in this county that needs to step up. It may be an ambulance director or the sheriff that needs to step up. There are times that the sheriff is the emergency services director or the deputy OES director. there may be, and we need to probably very much clarify that as part of our continuity of operations
I think
plan.
we absolutely.
And I won't disagree with that. And I'll put that on my list to do.
That's what I was fixing to say. Would you take it? Yes, Mr. Ledger.
I want to ask Alan, is Jack Thomas allowed to go to dispatching conventions and stuff?
Is he allowed to?
Yeah.
Yes, he
You
does.
send him to that?
Yes. The one thing that I have always done is attempt to cross-train every employee in the building. And even whether it's a secretary or it's someone doing building maintenance, I have always started everybody out going through the APCO basic 40-hour training class. And no, it's not his responsibility to answer a 911 phone call or answer those phone calls front line. But if the phones are ringing off the hook and there's a major catastrophic incident going on the line, he better be able to answer the phone. The guy sweeping the floor better be able to answer the phone, and so should the secretary doing payroll. All of those issues become secondary when there's emergencies going on. So we attempt to cross-train everybody to some degree in those activities. So yes, over the years, Jack has went to numerous classes that dealt directly with dispatching, but from the same standpoint, my dispatchers have went to numerous classes that deal with emergency management from time to time. And there's probably not a single conference that's held across the region that doesn't encompass both disciplines together. Just like you don't go to a fire convention and not see EMS stuff there, and vice versa. You know, sometimes our lines are very gray and we don't know which hat we're wearing, but we wear whichever hat we have to at the time based upon the incident.
Well, you know, you mentioned a while ago about some counties have separation of the 911 and OES. I can see where that's really a disadvantage in sometimes because of just this communication. If people don't know what everybody's doing, there's a problem. So
there's some huge advantages to having a whole bunch of people, and there's some huge disadvantage to having a lot of people wearing those different hats. And it just depends on the jurisdiction.
and how big you get and all this things too.
You know, you go to Mason County and the emergency services director is the 911 director and the ambulance director. You go to Cabell County and you've got 3 people holding. You know, there's no clear-cut statutory guideline that's handled. If you've got 55 counties, there's probably 55 different models on how those emergency management offices. Some offices, they're the floodplain coordinator. Thank God the commission didn't let us do that several years ago. I don't want to do that. But if you go to Boone County, the OES director is the floodplain coordinator. So there's no clearly defined model when you go across the state.
Well, and again, it's local preference. I'm sure what works one place may not work somewhere else. I think we got another comment back here.
I was just gonna ask Alan, in Lincoln County, does OES answer to 911 or vice versa, or are they completely 2 separate entities that share common personnel and a common physical facility?
Considering that I am the 911 director and I am the OES director, that's kind of a hard question to answer. The 911 staff answers to me, and as far as the emergency management staff, there is very little emergency management staff, but we share, you know, the secretary that does our emergency management reports and does that, also does the 911 stuff, and we are able to bill off a portion of our salary to emergency management and get reimbursement through the emergency management planning grant for it. The same thing with my salary, a portion of it's reimbursed. A portion of Chris's salary is reimbursed. A portion of Jack's salary is reimbursed. So as far as the entire second floor of my facility, all of those duties and responsibilities are shared. And I guess one of my employees put it this way best earlier in the week. He said, sometimes I don't know where I'm going to be or what I'm going to be doing today. I'm going to be doing whatever needs to be done and what the most pressing emergency is. So if in all reality, it works well for us. We don't have a large municipality where the paid fire chief, the paid police chief, and all those individuals report to the emergency management office during a catastrophe. So often, the 911 employees get pulled into an emergency management role when something happens. You know, Daryl and Brian and a whole handful, they've been out delivering water, they've been out handling radio equipment, they've been out passing out supplies. So the line is very clearly gray, but if the line was, you know, if it was more of a set answer, it would be much more expensive to the county not being able to share those resources back and forth depending upon where those people are needed. Did that answer your question or just confuse?
Well, yes. To both.
For
Well,
today,
it's
anyway.
rather, I see what you're saying, but it's rather confusing to distinguish between sometimes, but I see what you're saying.
I think you guys are confused. When I came on as a commissioner, it took me a year to figure out that there's two different organizations. I thought it was all one, but now I finally figured out there's an OES and there's a 911, but now it just took a while because you just assume sometimes without asking, I guess. Anyway.
Charles?
In reality,
Yes.
Charles,
begin
I'm
with,
wondering, does Allen know of anywhere that they have any organizational charts concerning that in other counties that we might could look at later on?
You hear the question.
Do it.
Commissioner Vance wanted to know if you know of any county, or maybe even find out counties that might have an organizational chart as to how to approach and how to develop.
Sure, and I'll give us some
911 and
samples to look
OES.
at.
He said he did, and he would definitely pull that resource in.
All right, thank you.
Where were we now? Somebody?
Steve
Right
was
here,
talking.
Steve.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, was you the OES director years before 911 ever started?
Well,
I think the association
if-
voted you in or recommended you.
If we're gonna do a history lesson here real quick,
Are you that old?
approximately 23, 24 years ago, when we started discussing 911, and I had somebody the other day say, I never realized you were ever a volunteer fireman in this county. Yeah, I cut my teeth with Jim Oldacre showing me almost everything I know. So
You're a smart man.
There's the question. So the point is, when we first started looking at 911, this association was going to contact Boone County and ask Boone County to look at under contract dispatching the fire service in this county, because there was no dispatch facility in this county at all. The county had been on tough times, and the county had closed the jail and sent all the prisoners to the Boone County Jail. This was back before regional jails. And the dispatchers that the Sheriff's Department used prior to that were the trustees in the jail. So when you called the Sheriff's Department's telephone number after hours, it was a trustee that answered the phone in the jail across the parking lot, got a hold of a deputy, I guess, if he wanted to, and did the dispatching. The fire departments were doing all kinds of different things. The ambulance was doing all kinds of different things, and if the ambulance was on the way back to the station trying to get another call, their phone was either on call forwarding or just didn't get answered, and you picked up the phone and called somebody else. So when I sat down, and Jim and several others sat down, and I think Jim probably took me to my first association meeting, and my first association meeting was with the West Hamlin Fire Department. And we talked about what was going to be done, and we discussed it. Rudy Thomas was the president of the Lincoln County Firemen's Association, and Rudy Thomas was the emergency services director for Lincoln County. And at that time, a committee was formed that was made up of myself, Jack Thomas, and if I'm correct, Paul Weaver, the chief of the Hamlin Fire Department at the time. We sat down, started to study, look at the feasibility. Over a course of 3 or 4 months, brought it back to the association, looked at what the potential and the possibility was for 911. And we spent a lot of time at the time. Rudy Thomas came to me one day and he said, "You're working on this project, but every meeting you go to, you're just this volunteer fireman from Alum Creek that wants to see 911 happen." He said, "You have no official position, you have no title for that position. Why are you doing it?" He said, "I'm getting ready to resign as Emergency Services Director, and you need to take that position on and make this happen." At that time, the county was getting zero funding from the state for an Emergency Services Director, and it was a pure voluntary position. And Rudy made the recommendation to the county commission. At the same time he resigned, the association recommended it to try to give me an avenue to work on making 911 happen. So I served as the Emergency Services Director, as a volunteer, for approximately 3, maybe 4 years, Steve. I'm not sure how it is, but that's how it came to be. So it became a function of 911 was born and came out of this association with the help of a lot of people that are still in this room and with the help of a lot of people that have went on before us. Some that have passed away that were avid supporters of what we did. But that's how I became OES Director, because Rudy resigned and I needed it in order to make 911 go along. So that's how that came to be. The County Commission had zero funding for the Emergency Services Office. It was an unfunded position. The state of West Virginia had a 50-50 matching federal grant. If you paid your Emergency Services Director X amount of dollars, then the state would reimburse you 50% of that. Well, the first check that I received from the county as 911 Director came 2 weeks before we went online as 911. And at that time, that 911 money was put in there and paid me, which allowed for the first matching money to be present to allow for us to do the drawdown from the state for the OES Director's position. So because of 911, OES became funded and had that matching money. Most counties around us fund their county office of emergency services several $1,000s each year. Some fund it higher than others. There are some OES directors in West Virginia that still operate purely as a volunteer. There are still some OES directors that work it just like I do, and the county is able to use the 911 as the matching money to draw down on the state money for the OES director's position. So that's how all that happened. Is that pretty correct, Jim? You were about the only one in this room that was here at the time.
Pretty accurate.
You and Steve.
Sounds pretty good history, doesn't it? I had no idea that that's how it happened. Jim?
Alan, you're part-time. I think we all understand, you know, what role it is you're in everything. Jack Thomas is part-time. Geneva is full-time as the chief dispatcher, telecommunicator. Now, Geneva works 4 days a week. You work part-time, you know, whatever that works out or equates to as far as days. And Jack works, I'm thinking like 4 days a week, comes in like at 6 in the morning, leaves out at 9 or 9:30 in the
Jack is
morning.
there till noon,
Okay.
unless there's other commitments or things that need to be done. But generally, I mean, he left at noon today or a little later than that.
But have you ever perhaps examined a more broad-based scheduling or something to maybe try to cover more days of the week versus Jack and Geneva both being there really the same 4 days, and you're there whenever you're not, you know, when you're on your off schedule or off shift or whatever? Is there a way perhaps that supervisory people could be more spread out? Because right now it looks like you're saturating supervision 4 days for the 7 days, and perhaps 3 days, you know, less covered. I think it's worth looking into,
I think that would be
but
my
like I said, that would be your, you know.
Yeah, look at it and see, because it does sound like it.
Well, when we first went into operation, we had one dispatcher on duty during the day and one dispatcher on duty at night, and the only time we ever had a second person in the building was on Thursday and Friday nights and Saturday nights and the first 5 days of the month,
And there's surely a reason for that.
because there was an increase in volume of calls. For whatever reason, that's here, but there wasn't, and that was the only time we had a second person in the building. It wasn't until we moved into our new facility that we still operated with one person at night. And it wasn't until somebody decided to break in on the 911 center and the security concerns that were there. You know, sometimes it's tough to justify two people in the building after 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning because of the call volume. But from a safety perspective, we've got to justify it. If somebody's got to get up and use the restroom, somebody's got to do that. But there's probably a need for also some looking at the overall structure so that one of those dispatchers at night is considered a supervisor, or somebody is considered a shift supervisor, so that on the weekend that person is the go-to person, and that person needs to grow into that position and be able to take that
We're
role.
on the right track.
And,
Well, you know, this thing about having two people down there, once we had the guy trying to break in, money's always the issue, trying to get enough to pay enough people, enough, those that are already there, pay them enough to stay, and to add more people on. It's been a budget issue, but Alan's been able to do that now by managing the money properly. I think getting the building, one of the notes paid off already. And of course, that's, we know that the cell phone fees and things like that has made a difference.
well, one of the things the dispatchers don't particularly care for, and the last one we hired, I come in and I said, you've got to understand that when you're there at night shift, you're going to be asked to do some things that may not just be dispatching. So, you know, we brought all of the signs that we were putting out across the county. We were paying considerable amount of money each year to have those signs produced in Charleston. And staff sat down and did the math and looked at the cost of doing that in-house. So now we're printing the vinyl and sticking those signs, and night shift is doing that. And so we're trying to look at other areas of responsibility, whether it's updating maps or updating our CAD data or printing signs or whatever, that when it gets slow at night, some of those other responsibilities are going to get done and handled. But the whole reason that we went to the 4-day shift, the 4-day schedule for Geneva, and we did it for some other office personnel, was because of the extensive amount of travel time that some of the employees were traveling to work. And approximately 2 years ago, when gas was spiking at $4 a gallon, and it was becoming very expensive. So we changed a couple people's schedules so that although Geneva is there only 4 days a week, she is doing her 40 hours in those 4 days a week, and she's there early in the morning and she's there until later in the evening. So yeah, there could be some flexibility, but if you do that, you kind of lose people at other times of the day, or you have to bring other people up to snuff.
Yeah, I think what you need to do is look at the total 24/7 schedule and have people trained, those that aren't, to take the leadership role. Whoever the two you got there, one of them will have to be designated. You'd like to step up and learn a few more things than you know now in order to be the person in charge. And some people want that responsibility, some won't have anything to do with it. But I think it would help, and it would address the issue that's been brought up, is that there'd be somebody in charge all times. Some of them more qualified maybe than others, but at least somebody is in charge.
I'll look at that, Jim. I won't argue with that.
All right. What else before we go to another topic? If we do, we can come back to this and think of something else. Next item I put down is the LEPC, and we'll start with Alan. So I was asking today, about that. And where are we, what do we need to do, is it, whose responsibility is it, and so just.
I'm going to take the podium. Maybe I can hide behind the podium where the camera can't see me. One of the things that I discussed with
Everybody
Mr.
here know what the LEPC is? I mean, I have to ask somebody to tell me sometimes, I forget.
We tried to, in 2009, this date was brought up last week, appoint several members to the LEPC in an effort to get that up and running. And at that time, we sent out questionnaires to the people that the commission appointed. And, you know, sometimes the commission makes an appointment, and they made several appointments at my recommendation. They made several appointments at the recommendation of this body. We sent out a questionnaire and asked for telephone number, email address, additional contact information on that LEPC. And less than half the people, some of you in this room responded, some of you didn't respond. We sent out a second letter requesting information, contact information, telephone numbers, email addresses, information that we had. Some of the information we had was good, some was didn't. We once again received still less than half a response. 2 or 3 members, one was my father representing the Red Cross. There was a couple of other Red Cross representatives that have since left. As far as having an LEPC in the form that we started, no, we have not been as active with that as I think Jim would like for us to be. However, there have only been a couple people that have even said, hey, when are we going to have an LEPC meeting? When are we going to do it? But I don't want anybody to think for a second that my office has not been very involved in the last 2 years, and especially since the December storm of 2009 that was removed, in doing emergency planning. We have probably done more in emergency planning in the last 2 years than we've done in the previous 10 years. And I will take full responsibility for not having communicated that to everybody in every avenue. But all of you all expressed a concern over the infrastructure of the county, over the water and the sewer and the other utilities in this county, and how widespread power outages in that storm were handled. Some of that we can't be held responsible for because we asked for those agencies to accept resources from our office early on in the storm, and I don't think any of them realized that the storm was going to be as widespread, as drug out as it was, and they didn't accept the resources that we offered them until a couple of days into the incident. Now, since that time, we have formed a critical infrastructure committee made up of all of the public service districts, made up of AEP, made up of Hamlin PSD, which handles sewer, made up of Armstrong has been invited and didn't attend the last meeting, but we've invited them and we've been in contact with them, and we have sat down and looked at every single piece of their physical plant that needs power to operate. Is it a public service district pump station, or it is a public service district treatment plant? Whatever the case may be, we have looked at every single site in the county. We've identified which sites in the county, if the power goes off, that the sewer is going to back up into people's homes, and which sites that the sewer, if the power goes off to those facilities, that it's going to bypass and go straight into the treatment plant untreated. And that's a huge difference, because if the sewer is going to back up into somebody's house, that's a place we want to get power to, more so than the sewage going into the plant untreated. So we identified those, met last December, if I'm correct, maybe on it. We were in contact with a certified engineer, professional engineer, that has visited every one of those facilities. Recently, I'm going to say probably 6 weeks ago, He took pictures of every one of those facilities. He has drawn up charts and is in the process of providing us budgetary information on what can be done to pre-plan those buildings in the event of a catastrophic power failure so that we can supply power to those. In addition to that, I applied for and received a grant that would purchase a generator. At that time, I approached the commission and said the generator, the money and the funds that we have is only enough for $80,000 or an 80 kW generator. We were in contact with Lincoln PSD. 80 kW wouldn't handle the two plants or the two pump stations that were critical to them. So the commission at that time gave us some additional funding. I, off the top of my head, don't remember, but I'm thinking it was $6,000 or $7,000, maybe more than that.
I don't remember either.
They gave us the additional funding, and we went out and bought a 100 kW generator. That generator has been shown to several of you. It was brought to a county commission meeting. It was parked out here in front of the courthouse for a while. That generator is now available to them. So we have been doing planning, and we have been doing that. But at the same time, prior to my vacation, the main two people, and I'm going to tell you that and he's bugged the dickens out of me for the last 10 years, and that's Francis over the LEPC. Let's get it going, let's do this, let's do that. I gave him the task after he retired and he come to work for us part-time. I said, I want you to get every single one of those letters that we sent out and put it into a spreadsheet. The ones that responded, I want to know. The ones that didn't respond, I also want to know. And I want to try to pull all that information in. That was given to him as a task prior to last week, prior to that being set up. And I have that list. And I'm not going to read the names of the people who didn't even return 2 letters that we sent, but there's 5 or 6 of you in the room. And you know, all we're asking for is, you know, there has to be communications both ways. And I'm not going to take full blame for the LEPC not being fully functional. Now, one of the things that was brought up in the meeting was by you, Jim, was I can go to Kanawha County and I can pull down their emergency response plans within the community off the website and I can look at that. That would be great. But in order to be able to do that kind of stuff, there's got to be some money. And there has never been the first penny of money sent toward an LEPC. And it's not fair to take Lincoln County and compare us with an LEPC that handles Kanawha and Putnam County, that has it's the largest and highest funded LEPC in the state. And I'm sure that when we start building Union Carbides and Dowels over on Mud River somewhere, then the commission will be in a position to allocate that kind of money toward an LEPC. Now, let's get technical here. I talked with the OES director out of Putnam County, which he's not the chairman of the LEPC, he merely belongs to the LEPC. And the Putnam County Commission contributes $8,000 a year to the operation of the LEPC. The Kanawha County Commission contributes $8,000 a year to the LEPC, making each one of their volunteer fire departments a member of that LEPC. At one time, the city of Charleston contributed $1,500 a month, or $1,500 a year to that LEPC. They have a full-time director, a full-time administrative assistant that handles that LEPC and does that kind of stuff. So if we want that kind of LEPC in this county, then we're going to have to come up and do some things. Now, every time we've sat down and tried to come up with the LEPC based upon the federal guidelines, we've been heavy on people from fire, and that's great. But when it comes to the environmental people from Department of Natural Resources, from hospital, from Red Cross, from all of those other entities, it's extremely difficult to fill those positions with those type of people because we just don't have that type of infrastructure in this county. And that's probably why Putnam County and Kanawha County's LEPC is together. That's probably why Wayne County and Cabell County's LEPC is together, to be able to pull those resources. Most of The large active LEPCs in this state are multi-county organizations that exist for more than one county or a couple of counties come together. And I would love to have an LEPC. And I'll be the first one to tell you that we had discussed that at the first LEPC meeting, my motion was going to make you president of the LEPC or chairman so that you could lead it up. Nothing says I have to be the LEPC chairman.
In fact, you're not allowed to be chairman.
I don't want to be. I can be the first one.
Statutory.
I don't want to be.
Well, what's missing that we need to talk about here this evening while this subject is on the table? that we need to do that in a hurry up and long term, I guess, short term, but is there some things that we should do now that people in the audience have to offer that we need to talk about and make note on?
I guess I would like to have some direction from this group. If you want a fully self-sustaining LEPC, I think that it is going to be very difficult with the size of our county and the resources that we have to pull from to have anything close to what we're being compared to in our neighboring counties. And it may be time that we sit back and decide if we want to do that, do we approach the LEPCs on our jurisdictional boundaries and look at joining that LEPC and becoming part of it. I'm going to tell you one of the things that has always precluded that from happening was that when an LEPC went to the state to apply for funding, if the Kanawha Putnam LEPC went and applied for funding, they were treated as one entity. If Wayne and Cabell's LEPC went, they were treated as one entity. Well, for the first time, the state has finally listened to what we were saying. And now, if it's a tri-county or a 4 or 5 county LEPC, you can apply for funding based upon each county that is a member of that LEPC. Do we have the time and the resources and the necessary effort to have an LEPC in this county that does what we want it to do? Or do we want to look at the options of becoming part of one of the bigger LEPCs on our boundaries? Or do we want to approach Boone County or Logan County? The fact is that if we have a major catastrophic incident in this county, if you think the resources are only going to come out of this county, then we're all sadly mistaken. They're going to come out of every county around us, just like if they have an incident, we're going to go to their aid. And we'll work on making it happen in whatever direction. But if we're going to do it, it needs to be active. And Kanawha County's LEPC, I think it was kind of unfair to compare us to them, considering that they are probably a model LEPC of all of those within FEMA region, within our FEMA region.
Actually, the old KPEPC or is KV?
KPEPC.
Yeah, well, the old one, the Kanawha Valley, we call it originally, was the first in the country, and the federal model came from the Kanawha.
So that's all I'm saying. Granted, yeah, we can do some additional planning, but are we going to have what they have in Kanawha County? Probably not on the budget that we have to put at it. But if we go join the Kanawha Putnam LEPC, they're going to look at this commission and they're going to say, we want some funding from you to be part of it.
It seems to me like that the eastern end of the county would benefit from being into Kanawha County. It seems like in the southern end of the county, it may be Logan County.
You've got a very valid point.
Down to Cabell County. I mean, you look at it, I mean, it seems like if you're going to really have response and have people that share similar things, you don't want to have to dissect the county into at least 3 different directions.
What do you think the best option is, Jim?
Well, I'm not convinced that there's not funding. Actually, from what I had noticed, Alan, was the filing fees, the Tier 2 filing fees that all of the utilities, the gas companies, and those that, when they file their annual report, they have to pay the State Emergency Response Commission a
That is
filing
correct.
fee. Okay. Those filing fees are made available in at least a smaller portion back to the county. Now, there is a $5,000 grant and a $1,000 a year grant in addition to your regular emergency management grant that you get for salary reimbursement. That comes back just for the administration and financial assistance back to an LEPC. Now, a part-time LEPC would not have a real heavy end of expenditures, but that is actually $6,000 a year that has been available to LEPC since 1995.
And you have to have all those qualifications, those representations there.
Yeah, the criteria is that you have an LEPC in place. They have appointed a chairman, they have a set of bylaws, and that they meet at least once a year and review their plan and file. Now, we got part of that done, but at least with that, that is an availability. Now, since 1995, we've lost out on about $96,000.
Since 1995, that funding has not been that amount.
I mean, I don't.
Because
I
that
know it
amount
isn't
has been increased over the last couple of years with an increase in the filing fee. It's
Okay,
not
so
been
you
that
were
much.
aware of it then?
Oh, I'm more than aware that it's there, and you and I have discussed it, so you know I am.
But like I said, I think there is some funding if we can get over that first hump and get this thing organized and throw out a basic plan. Now, the comparison that was made between the KP, the Kanawha County plan, and the Lincoln, Lincoln County plan, I think that was taken out of context that Lincoln County could be compared to the Kanawha Putnam plan, because they cannot.
But that's who
But
you
it-
compare us to.
It could, no, I said I could go to their website and get that plan, okay? That is a simple download. Lincoln 911 already has a website. You can go there, you can download weather spotter information, you can download a lot of other things. That's merely a link to a PDF file. We could do that once we had, get something in place. Now, I think that there is some funding. I think just to throw our hands up and say that we can't afford it, this county can't afford anything, I'm not so sure that that has really legitimately been looked at.
I don't think anybody's thrown their hands up and said we can't afford it. I said that if we're going to do it, we need to decide whether we're going to do it here or we're going to look at an LEPC that involves a larger county in order to pull from those resources. But since you've got the documentation in front of you, I'm sure that you realize there's got to be a lot more people on that LEPC than just volunteer firemen and the few people that we've got. And it's very difficult to pull hospital, Red Cross, agriculture, DNR, all of those other agencies in there that need to be part of it. So if that's what you propose and this group wants to do that, then I think we should take that and run with it. But the EMPG funding will not reimburse the LEPC, and it can't be, it has to be a clear line. And when I spoke to half a dozen different counties in the past week, most of those counties' LEPCs do have some support from the county. And I can assure you that one of the things that has to be done with those MSDS sheets is it has to be filed with the state. Is that correct? It also has to be filed with the local fire department, and it has to be filed with the county LEPC. Well, every Tier 2 form, which is where your hazardous materials are in the county, every single Tier 2 form that has been filed in this county has been neatly filed for the last 10 years, and they're in our file cabinet, and we have records of them. So some of those things that LEPC would be doing are probably going to get stuck on the OES office to continue to file those forms, because if you or somebody else in the room becomes the LEPC chairman, you're not going to want to carry a file cabinet around in your room or in your fire station. It needs to be a generalized point. So there's still going to have to be some county involvement, and I'm willing to support you. But I'm also not willing to sit back and take full responsibility, because it's just something that kind of got dropped in my lap because nobody else wants to take the ball and run with it. And I'll be more than happy to support you and help you with it. But if we want to do this LEPC, it's going to have to take an effort of everybody, you included, to make this happen.
I think we've already spent more time right now than we have since we appointed the committee, I think, on this thing. It's something that I don't claim to know very much about, but it sounds like it's something we need to address. Since Mr. Holder has mentioned that one of his employees, Francis, has always wanted to do this, I think we should ask Francis to help us put this thing together and make it a reality.
Yeah, there has to be some way to accomplish it. The EPA put out a survey last year, that actually went into print this year, on LEPCs across the country. Their findings here, there's a summary sheet. The majority of the LEPCs that responded to their survey were rural mixed suburban residential populations under 50,000 in people. That's pretty much Lincoln County. Their findings of those that they surveyed across, and we can't be the only rural county, 9 out of every 10 responding LEPCs met at least once in the past year. 3/4 of the LEPCs meet at least quarterly. Close to 60% of the responding LEPCs reviewed and updated their emergency plan in the past 12 months. 3 out of 4 responding LEPCs indicate that the majority of their membership is familiar with their emergency plan.
That was of those that responded. That's the key point that you're bringing up.
Well, I think
And so, but what I'm saying is that these did respond. These have figured out a way to make it work in a rural area. You know, that's, I think it's worth pursuing, and it's worth.
Well, and I think Francis, we'll get together and see if we can come up with a plan, and certainly I would ask Jim if you would help Francis do that, because it seems like you know more about it than most people here, and I think if we'd like to use that ability to help put it together. I mean, we're here tonight to find out what the issues are, and this seems like this is a major issue that needs to be done. I don't think it's impossible. I think it may be hard to fill all those positions to get the federal money. It may not be. We may find people to step up to the plate and meet those qualifications and attend at least one meeting out of the year. I think we should set an anniversary date and say, yes, we're going to meet at least this date, and let's do it. And how much time it would take to organize it and get it put together, but I don't think it's impossible to do that. I'm going to leave Alan with that challenge of, since Mr. Holt is his employee and an employee of the county, that within the next 6 weeks, I'd like to see a plan put together and come to the commission and make that report. And up on that report, if it is satisfactory, then I would certainly ask the other commissioners to put like $3,000 on the table and say, here's some money to get you started. I'd like to see that happen in the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Charles. You know, also if they need any input for medical professions or whatever, I can help them with that.
Al, the neighboring counties, we already know Kanawha, Putnam, Cabell, Wayne, but how active are the LEPCs in Logan and Boone counties?
Well, Doug just left. Is there anyone here from Boone County that represents that area? I hate to.
Well,
so they don't have any tri-county relationship like the other counties around the state?
But it may be something beneficial to all of us. But I hate to say how active they are, but I know across the state some LEPCs are in no better shape than we are, and some LEPCs are extremely active and strive for what we ought to do. So it just depends on the jurisdiction and where you're at. And
well, I mean, I look at it this way. There's lots of rural in Lincoln County, in West Virginia, their firefighters don't come up to the standard these people do. They don't put into it like you guys do. So I just think we have to look at ourselves. We can compare ourselves to other people, but if it's a responsibility that we have to make this happen, then I don't see why we just don't do it. I mean, let's give it a try. We haven't tried it as hard as we can. We put it on Alan to do that, and knowing very little about it, speaking for myself anyway. And he done a job that we asked him to do, but so many things that trying to keep going. Apparently, this is one of them that we didn't keep going.
I'll be frank, and I will accept total responsibility. It's not been at the top of my list. There are other things that have been much more pressing, and you know, you come into your sit down at your desk some days, and you expect to take care of something, and you've got a fire put out.
You know, everything that I planned to do for the last 2 days has been shot because something else came up. So, you know, it's not been at the top of the list.
Right.
Yeah, I've been around emergency services, started out in Lincoln County years ago, going on 32, 33 years. If everybody in this room feels an LEPC is needed, if everybody feels it's needed, I feel it's needed. But if we feel it's needed, is it worth enough to you for you to put up the funding? If so, we got the levy. Is there any way you take $500 from each fire department or $1,000 from each fire department to help fund an LEPC? If everybody here thinks it's needed and it is an important product, then we should be willing to also help fund something that we see a benefit from. If you don't see the benefit, then don't fund it. If you want
I
to
don't see an
benefit,
issue as far as using the levy money doing that. That would have to be each individual fire department decide that. We couldn't make that decision.
But when it comes to notification of the LEPC members, we can use the warrant system to do that. When it comes to notification and sending out letters, that's something I can obviously use my EMPG funding grant for. And so, it's once again, those lines are real gray, and we can justify it, but if we needed to send out a notice, and Jim was president of or chairman of the LEPC, he'd probably justify using his own funds to send that letter out. You know, so, you know, I'll help you and I'll support you, but it's going to require an active group to make it happen if it's going to be successful.
You know, I want to offer two motions on the floor. The first motion is that we place on the second meeting in April on the agenda to revisit the LEPC and have Alan to come back. Second meeting in April.
Third Thursday, 10 o'clock.
I'll second that motion.
Motion and second. Be the 21st, Judy said, just now, of April, 10 o'clock. We have a motion and second. Being all yes votes,
Yes.
motion carries.
I think it's important for us just to get started and make it happen.
That'd be the third Thursday in April.
Yes.
I would also offer a second motion on the floor for the fire departments that would take the challenge of giving up $500 from their levy, that the commission would match every $500.
I'll second that motion.
Motion second to have the county commission to match. If you decide on 500, then we will match 500. If you decide on whatever, we'll match whatever all the fire departments decide.
Here, I'll amend that motion to match whatever is provided.
Motion second. All yes.
Yes.
Motion carries. Francis, you can handle that, can't you? Yes.
That's my boss there.
Well,
and
I think you can.
I also asked him, I guess today, or maybe the day before yesterday, we spent about 16 hours together. I'm not sure, thank goodness he had some candy bars, because we got starved with hearts that day. To look at that critical infrastructure group that we've already got working and seemed to be a good group, and contact each one of those people from all the public service districts, even the guy from Logan PSD, Appalachian Power, and ask all of those people if they also would become a member of the LEPC, and even if it's a separate or a subcommittee of the LEPC, we call it the Critical Infrastructure Committee of the LEPC, ask all those people if they're willing to help us and serve in that capacity, because that's where they actually belong.
Well, since you've dragged me into this a little bit here, can UConn, the city, is handling to letting us use their basement for meetings?
Sure we can. We'll deal with that.
We'll find your place.
We'll talk about that.
Is that the best
When
place?
this thing grows, it's already bigger than what we can handle at their facility.
Well, I was wondering why the courthouse, you don't want to use the
We had
courthouse.
we had that many people at our last meeting.
And they have a good meeting center now at the new Tri-River Transit. They've got a decent meeting room.
Okay, that's right.
But anyway, you let us know if you can't find space, we'll get you space.
We can do that.
Anybody in here that can help on this, let's do it while the iron's hot. Let's get it done. Okay, let's move to the next item. I just have down technician work on towers. Those I don't remember what the issue was, had to do with billing maybe, work had been done, maybe been improperly billed, I don't remember exactly now, I forgot what that was.
I think part of that was a misunderstanding, and I think part of that has been resolved since last Thursday. But since the press was here last week and they're here this week, I want to take a liberty to explain what took place without calling anybody out specifically. But for the past 15 years, every bill that was done in communications in this county, whether it be a fire association bill, a bill for EMS, a bill for the sheriff's department, those bills came across my desk. And that was, if I'm correct, something that Jim asked to be done, so that since we were the one making the calls, since we were the ones that knew when the technicians picked up the keys, since we were the ones that knew what they physically done, that I would sign off on those bills and certify what was done. Now, unequivocally, probably half the bills that come to me sometimes need to be corrected. Now, it's a long ways from Huntington or Charleston sometimes for a technician to drive here. And every time they come here, they charge us mileage and they charge us time for that mileage. And if they're working on something, changing a relay or changing something at a tower site, I try to use the county's money and your money as prudently as I can and try to kill 2 or 3 birds with one stone if I can. And sometimes bills do get mixed up and get added together. And approximately 6 weeks ago, or maybe a little longer, someone on the association chose to change that policy and have all of those bills that were association related sent to the association directly. I never saw those bills. There was a problem with a bill, and I only found out about it after that bill had been passed around to some individuals and some hard feelings had already been started, because they grouped work together that had been done on the microwave system for the sheriff's office and work that had been done on the Hamlin Fire Tower. And at that time, I expressed what a problem that this was going to create in the future to Mr. Lovejoy and to Mr. Hudson at the time, that by changing that policy and having those bills come to the association directly, that it would create future problems. And that's exactly what happened on this one particular bill. It was sent to the association. I did not see it. I had not seen it first, and it was not a bill that you should have paid for. It was an $800 and some bill that was a result of something that was wrong in the 911 center, and we would pay for it. I took that bill, and I have since asked that it be corrected and asked that it be billed to my agency and not yours. And I have also asked Mr. Hudson to change that policy back so that we could at least see those bills first and make sure that everything's correct. I have worked very, very hard with my own blood, sweat, and tears to save money for this association and see to it that we did as much work and as much stuff in-house to save spending your all's money when we didn't have to, and trying to combine services and combine things.
Such as the horsepower.
Exactly. So all I'm saying is there is no attempt on my part at any point in time to shove bills off from the Firemen's Association that are duly the county's responsibility or the responsibility of some other agency. And I merely ask that if you've got a question about a bill, pick up the phone and call me before you get upset. Pick up the phone and call you before you pass it through 3 fire chiefs and it gets blown into a situation that it doesn't have to be. I'm not out there to get your money. I'm not out there to take money that belongs to you or anybody else. So hopefully the Firemen's Association will rethink that policy, and those bills will once again be sent to us directly so we can at least look at those bills before those bills get distributed out to the individual agencies. can we agree upon having those bills sent to us again so that we can correct those situations?
What we tried to do, Alan, before, is correct that by the numbers, the stickers, tag and everything. And we requested that anytime a bill come in, that number would be on the bill. That shows us what piece of equipment they worked on. That gives us accountability for their equipment. If we see that number come in constantly, then we could look at.
Maybe it's time to replace that piece.
Replace it.
Exactly. And
That's what we tried to do that. But before, we got a nasty gram 2 or 3 times, did we, Steve, from the F&L, that they was gonna cut us off. And we didn't have the bills. That's the reason why we requested.
Well, and a lot of times, I've got a bill laying on my desk right now. And I had a vendor call me today, and they said, when are you gonna pay this bill? And I said, I'll approve this bill for payment when the piece of equipment works like you promised it would. And billing people can call me all day long. And I'll tell you, if I buy something from the county or anything else, I am very, very cautious about not paying final balance until everything's correct, because that's the only way to hold people to the gun sometimes.
We are too. That's the reason why for this accountability.
But all I'm asking is, if there's a problem, come to me. Let's not get that situation blown out of proportion. And I talked to Steve about this last week, and Steve and I have agreed to sit down and have a cup of coffee or Diet Pepsi a couple times a month and go over the bills and make sure that if there is an issue that we are making a regular schedule. Steve's in Hamlin a good bit. I pass his fire station every time I come to Hamlin. We've agreed to sit down and start to open that communication and that dialogue more. But there is no attempt by anybody to, I have worked hard, and, when we hung the antennas initially at Samarico, Jim provided the rope, he provided the pulleys that we used. We did as much work as we possibly could to get this center up, because we were dirt poor, trying to put a 911 center online in the middle of a recession, and we did everything we could in-house as cheap as we could. And there was some frustration and some complaint about, well, why didn't my antenna get hung fast enough? Well, we've done everything we can to use a couple of people around the county that are qualified to do high angle stuff and climb, and a couple of those individuals aren't available to us anymore. Now, the Hart's antenna needed to be put up. You all wanted it put up. We called F&L. We said, take your tower climber and put it up. Now, the tower climber was on the tower from noon until almost dark that night. When you all use a vendor to do some of that work, sure, they're going to get it done quicker, but you're going to pay 3 times the money. And all I'm asking is that if you want the economy version, if you want us to go out and do the cable ends and the connector ends and tie all that together, I've been to so many factory certification schools over the last few years. I thought about bringing certificates tonight, but I'm not going to do that. But the point I'm saying is that if you want us to do it, and you want the discounted rate, sometimes when we do it, you don't ever see a bill. Every bit of that cable that's at the Hart's Tower, you never got a bill for it. I challenge you to go back and find it. The cable ends that were put on, that I put on, you never saw a bill for any of that. But if you want it done the next day, and you're willing to pay 3 times the amount, then say so. But don't crucify me when we're trying to save you money in the process if it takes a little while. If you want it done tomorrow, then sure, we'll get it done tomorrow. But the bill for Hart's the other day, after they left Hart's, they went to Samarico. It's $1,600, guys.
I got to say, in the last 2 days, I've never seen so much work on these tires and on equipment. And
Well, Samarico went down as part of it. And the other thing is, Jason contacted me before I went on vacation. We had 2 tower projects that had to be done. We had one tower climber I called. He said, I'm too old for this anymore. I'm not climbing when it's below 45 degrees. I contacted F&L several times, and we'd schedule a day, and sure as we scheduled that day, it'd snow. The Sheriff's Department was operating on a magnetic mount antenna sitting on top of the building at the Hamlin Tower for the last month and a half. So when the weather cleared, this is exactly what I told the chief at Harvest, we had to take care of the Sheriff's Department antenna first because they couldn't talk across town here. That was the first job that was done. And the next job that was on the list was replacing that antenna at Harvest. And I gave you my word before I took my trip that the first day we got that was pretty after that, it would be scheduled. And it was. So, we'll go ahead. I mean,
But the thing of it is, just like I told you out at the tower site, I was busy that day and I went out there, just like I told you. You know, that antenna was bought last July at the association at my station. Why did it take that long? I have had fatalities in my area and cannot talk to dispatchers and tell them I need to fly a health med.
well, I can
cannot
assure
talk to them and tell them
I can
I need another ambulance. You know, money's money.
so.
When it comes to us preserving life, I need to be able to talk to these dispatchers because 5 minutes in our area is an hour to somebody's life.
Well, I can assure you that from the future, when we work on things and we work on problems, I'm going to look at the president of the association and I'm going to say, how quick do you want it? And are you willing to pay what it's going to take to get somebody here? Now, I'm going to tell you what's happened with tower climbers. You all seen what's happened with Brick Street, and every one of you has run into problems. Well, if somebody's designated as a tower climber and that's their primary job, most of the tower climbing work and most of the tower technicians don't reside in the state of West Virginia anymore. And they don't do that because of what happened with workers' compensation. So it's very expensive and it's difficult to find tower climbers sometimes. And and you can call, we'll not get onto the names, but I'll give you a list of 2 or 3 people and they'll tell you I've asked no more than 24 times over the last 6 months to get them to get a day free where they could climb. So in the future, when you call and want something done, I'm going to look at you and say, Johnny, do you want us to work on it, try to save you some money, or do you want to pay what it's going to take to get F&L or one of the other vendors down there to take care of it? And if that's what you want, then yeah, we can make it happen in 2 or 3 days.
I think that's what I'm.
But you're going to have to pay the price if that's what you
Well,
want.
look at the money we've spent already, guys. Look at it. And these guys, I hear these guys, every association meeting, there ain't been an association meeting happen that I don't hear something about radios. I was going to West Hamlin one day, going across West Hamlin Mountain, dropped down the other side. Hamlin had a farm, West Hamlin was toned out, and I couldn't hear the 911 center. And they was a holler. Ron, I think Ron was responding, trying to respond. Lincoln couldn't hear it. That's ridiculous. You can look and see the light on the tower. What's wrong? What's wrong?
And that seems to be the same problem we're having down in our area in Harps too. I mean, we have a lot of times when we're close to our tower even, or, we might be far away from it either way, but we can't talk to them when we get out.
I will be, I've been in contact with the chief 2 or 3 times over the last 2 days, and I'll be more than happy to go over to this form if you think it's necessary, but talk to Jason and he'll tell you what we're trying to sort through. There's a problem somewhere between that tower site and that dispatcher's console. And I sent Francis this morning to Huntington with 2 radios and had both radios reprogrammed. One was an OES radio and the other one was a spare. And I had both of them reprogrammed for the Harts frequency. We put one in this morning and changed the second one, and there was no significant difference with the radio at all. It still comes down to that tone remote adapter that's in there. And to be totally honest with you, that is the vendor that I'm holding the $20,000 payment on until that one issue is resolved that interfaces that with our console. So I had a long discussion with them this afternoon. I'm aware that there's a problem. My hands are kind of tied until I get some technical assistance. And I was assured today by the vendor that's handling our console that if 2 issues that we were promised in the contract are not resolved within the next 2 days, that they will have somebody in here Wednesday, week after next, and they will be here Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, or until the situation is resolved. Can't talk across the county. Our money is wasted. I fully realize that. It's as frustrating for me as it is you all, and And sometimes I can't, you know, like I said, we have made an effort. It's out of our hands right now. And that's exactly what I told the lady on the phone. You're welcome to listen to the tape. I'll pay the bill when these two issues are resolved and not until.
What about the issue that Mr. Lovejoy brought up? Is that a different tower? Do we know what the issue might be there? Why you see we go down West Hamlin?
That is not a direct issue with the Hamlin Tower. How long ago was that?
It's been about 6 months ago.
Okay, I don't know. We've changed the antenna at Hamlin since then, or at the Hamlin Tower since then.
We haven't been able, well, I'm not trying to pick on you, we haven't been able to talk out this about 4 calls in the last 2 weeks. We're not picking up crap. It's nothing but static. You can't hear the dispatcher. The tone goes out. You don't hear any voice. If you're lucky, the tone goes out well with the activated pager. And the dispatchers can't hear us. We're talking on a tin can and a string. I mean,
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you that we don't need to make some upgrades. And you of all people are of a technical sense. And those UHF links are still wideband. Those UHF links are getting a tremendous amount of noise and a tremendous amount of interference. And all of you all know how much that you heard Lawrence County on the Sheriff's Department frequency a couple of months ago. All of that was getting in on the UHF link, which they were licensed for and which we were licensed for. We had no control over that except to go out and start changing frequencies around and lowering antennas, and we've still got a problem with that. There's just not enough channels to go around, and some of that's going to have to be addressed. We've got some long-term plans to replace some of those UHF links that are being eat up with interference with microwave, but we are still several months away from getting that microwave system fully in place to take the place of those UHF links. We've got one hop between the Samarico Tower and the Hamlin Tower, and the Sheriff's Department radio has been on that microwave link now for maybe 2 months. When I asked Sheriff Bowman today how he felt the system was performing, he said it's better than it's ever been. Part of that's because of that microwave link. The other part of the fact is that we got an antenna that had been bad fixed that we couldn't fix during the winter. There is, I know on Jim's part, an interest in going to the microwave system and allowing the fire system to reside on it. But when we look at the UHF links, we've got 3 of them from dispatch to 3 tower sites. You all are maintaining about $45,000 worth of equipment to get those towers from dispatch up to the hilltop just in UHF radios, not counting tone remote adapters, not counting control stations in the dispatch center. A lot of it will be corrected as we move forward with that. A lot of it will be corrected with this other console issue. We've got that Gaytronics tone remote adapter that's still in there, that's about 7 or 8 years old, is creating issues, and we are trying to find a workaround. And I have been fully assured that once we get on this microwave system and once we get rid of that Gaytronics tone remote adapter board and get it out of the mix, then our audio quality is going to improve substantially. That's also in with the same issue that's creating the Harts problem. I'll be more than happy to show you in the back room those boxes that are causing me to not, causing me.
What type of time frame are we looking at to get this repaired for it functions?
I was told today by Dawn with Avtech Consoles that they would have somebody in here on Wednesday, a week from this coming Wednesday, so 10 days. They would have someone in here to work with us starting Wednesday morning, and I told her we would clear our schedule and make sure that everybody was available to sort through these issues and get it resolved. I would hope that it would be resolved before they leave and go back to the factory on that. The other issue is how soon can we build the microwave and where does the funding come from and how much can we do?
Which towers have microwave links currently?
There was microwave between Hamlin and Samarico, between the 2 towers. There's a microwave hop between the 911 center and the Hamlin Tower that is partially done. But once again, we ran into bad weather and we couldn't position the microwave
Is there
dishes
not
in
the
the bad weather.
bandwidth to use one microwave to link?
Yes, there is. But what we looked at, and I explained this in great detail last night to Jim, once we go with the microwave, there has to be some redundancy built in there. Because the microwave's 8 channels. It's a small short haul microwave, 4.8 gigahertz, and it will allow 8 channels to pass between the dispatch center and those sites. More than enough to handle the fire departments, more than enough to handle the sheriff's department. But once we do that, we have to have some extra built-in redundancy, because if that microwave hop goes down, not only do we lose the sheriff's department, but we lose the fire departments and we lose all of the towers. So that's why we have to have 2 microwave hops out of dispatch, and one is a live, hot standby. They both carry 50% of the traffic, and if one goes down, the other one picks up the load with no loss of service, no loss of traffic. So that's got to be done, and there's got to be some funding come up with where we can do that. And me and Mr. McCann talked about that today, about looking at some other funding sources that the county has that might be able to help fund part of that. But I don't think that money's going to be available until after July 1st. Is that correct?
Most likely. And I don't think, I wrote something up here to ask you, I couldn't remember in our conversation today, what are we talking about, a budget that, in order to go to the microwave and do the 50/50 you talked about there, as far as the load around, what are we talking about money-wise?
We're talking about $40,000. And what we're talking about is a microwave hop 2 out of dispatch to the Hamlin Tower, 1 from the Hamlin Tower to Samarico, 1 from the Hamlin Tower to Harts, and 1 from Harts to Samarico. It will create a triangle. And that way, if the microwave hop goes down, any one microwave link goes down in that equation, the system will continue to work without any loss of service. If the microwave hop between dispatch and the hilltop goes down, which would mean 2 hops going down, the system will still work with complete redundancy without anything going down. So all I'm saying is, I wanted to get the system up and running, try the sheriff's department on. We had to do something with him anyway because the radio got hit by lightning, had to be replaced, and it had to be moved over to narrowband anyway. So that was the logical equation. They had the money. It was going to have to be spent somewhere. And we bought the microwave large enough that it could handle fire service. But before we put all of our eggs in one basket, the basket's got to be big enough and strong enough to handle what we're doing.
Again, talking about the 40,000, if this is a priority, is there anything that all the players, including fire departments, 911, OES, county commission, ambulance service, Tri-River, all those people, sheriff's department, everybody uses this. Is it fair that we try to, if it would speed it up, and it seems to me like that's what we need to do, of course I don't know a whole lot about it, I know that we've got to be able to get communication going, otherwise we're stuck in the mud. So it's, if we can get a commitment, not money, a commitment from each of the people involved that this is important to. What I'd like to be able to ask you to do, Alan, would be if the county commission would say, we'll stand good for the $40,000, but we'd like for each player to come forward within the next year and come back to us with some of that money to pay back. Not all, I'm just talking about some. So that everybody involved in, if it's that important, let's get it done, and we'll put the money up and get now and say, let's get it going with the understanding that we get some money back. Is that a logical way to look at it? I mean, it seems to me like it's the way to go. I mean, I'm just hearing we're not getting the job done now.
And make it faster.
That would be much appreciated by the commission if you were willing to do that.
I'd have to have some help in the commission. I'm sure all agree, I believe it. I'm not a communication guy. I just do what my wife tells me and I don't have any problems. But this other stuff, I can understand. You gotta be able to hear this stuff. And I know you know, I don't.
What we paid for the hop from the Hamlin Tower to Samarico was $15,475, and I've got the quotation, and I told you I would give you that if you want to look at that, Jim. And that, everything from cable connectors, it just doesn't include labor. and time, and there was, it wasn't that big of a deal. It's a pretty simple, easy system. We did that we divided it into phase 1 and phase 2, and phase 2 was doing the whole county. And when we sat down and designed it with the engineer, I wanted to make sure that what we did in phase 1 was completely compatible and large enough to handle the rest of it.
Is this a solution to the problems that we're having now?
Well, the main reason that I wanted to try the sheriff's department on it first was because I felt like I got egg on my face a few years ago when me and some others proposed doing the simulcasting system, and then it didn't come out and work out as well as we wanted to. So I wanted to make 100% sure and be very, very conservative going into this. Jim, you are as technical as any other fire chief in this county, and Ron, you are as technical as probably anybody I know. So I want some other opinions from you guys. This is the direction that I think will solve a lot of our problems. But I want some other people to make sure that if it requires you all picking up the phone and calling Webster County and talking to Richard Rose, which you know very personally, or picking up the phone and calling the director in Mineral County, some of the other counties that have done this, talk to them and ask them. I want you all to buy in on this and not just say Alan Holder got up here and sold us another bill of goods, because that's not my intention.
Well, there's no doubt the microwave is the route to go.
It is.
If it wasn't the case, the state wouldn't be spending $100 million on their IRP system using microwave to carry tower to tower statewide.
And most every, your NACOM system, the current one that's gonna be phased out, it's like.
If that's, I wait to make sure we're on the right track. I'm like Alan, I don't want to go down the wrong road because this is a long commitment.
There are other effective ways to do it, but microwave is pretty much where everyone is going. The UHF links, they work better spectrums than the ground these days.
I just want to make it clear, is the radios we've got now compatible with what we're wanting to go to, or are we going to have to switch our radios out in our truck?
There's not going to be anything switched in your trucks. It's merely a...
The handhelds and everything's going to be all the same?
There's no switching, none involved.
Now, we're same thing as an antenna, this microwave system, correct? Or we're replacing the antenna system?
You are replacing the links between dispatch and the tower sites.
I just want to make clear that's
Yeah.
what.
Yeah, this has been an ongoing issue for a long time. I mean, I've visited Jason and Bobby, even here in Hamlin, and today Sheila Frazier accompanied me to Huntington to a breakfast, and on the way there we talked about how her radio was having problems in the Ranger area. So if this would fix the problem and make the county safer, it's a scary thought that we have these fire trucks and these workers across the county trying to keep people safe, yet they can't communicate with Hamlin and get help or health nets. So I would make the motion at this point to provide the $40,000 and to work with those that have a vested interest in getting back some of the proceeds.
45.
45,000.
Money just went up, I swear.
It's about $15,000.
I will amend the motion to reflect $45,000.
Is it 45? Do we have a second, Doc?
I'm saying that.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor for the county commission whenever that money is needed for the $45,000 to get this process in place, with the understanding that we'll have, and I forgot to add the school board, are they not a communicator in this thing?
The school board uses UHF links to tie some of their 3 towers together also. Now,
So we should invite them to participate?
I think we should invite them to participate as long as we have the necessary channel capacity not to overload public safety.
Well, you let me know that. I mean,
And the thing is, once we get this done, there's $50,000 worth of equipment there that belong to you guys that's not going to have to be maintained anymore. So although we're spending $45,000 tonight, we are taking money that we're taking a bunch of UHF channels that have been used by us, a bunch of UHF channels that's being used by the school board, and getting rid of all those. So it's going to benefit us all in a lot of ways.
It seemed to me like I wish we'd have been talking about this 6 months ago. We, you know, but I'm just letting
Well, 6 months ago, I wasn't as sure as I am,
Okay.
and I wanted to see to it that it would work. And I will assure you that when we put that first microwave system in between Hamlin and Samarico, there were issues that came up. And we had to sit back and go to the engineers and say, okay, now how do you do push-to-talk and core and closures and do all that over a microwave system where you've been using relays to do it? How do you do it over the microwave? And we had to go back and re-engineer some stuff. So we've learned a lot since those 6 months.
Well, and it's definitely, you don't want to be the anything.
It'd be great if we could revisit this also on during the second meeting in April, just to get an update of where we are.
Well, I will assure you that I will order the microwave dishes, the cabling, and the ODU outdoor units tomorrow before noon, because this makes my life a lot easier. We will order those, and we will have somebody let you know. That will be the hardest part, getting those pieces of equipment in here and getting those hung on the towers and getting those put together. And we will get that done tomorrow.
I'm afraid that this issue kind of got off a little bit. Yeah, there was a bill that was inadvertently sent to us that should have went somewhere else. That was an $800 item. That's not really where our concern was.
Okay, let me, I'm sorry. We had a motion and a second. I think I forgot to call for an all yes vote.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, that's my fault. Is an all yes vote?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimous. All right.
All right. I'm sorry. What the discussion with the association was, Alan, that we tracked back through the inception of the accounts and the radio maintenance accounts. We went back to the beginning of the upgrade and the purchase of the equipment. And we tracked annual maintenance costs up until 2 years ago. 2 years ago, almost to the day, all of a sudden, our annual maintenance costs doubled. It remained doubled the last 2 years over the previous 8. Now, that is just about, it seemed odd to us, and that was our concern in not knowing the information. It seemed odd that was just about the time started having a lot of problems with your older consoles. You were moving in the direction of replacing them, and during this whole process of the consoles being replaced. All this, at the same time, our costs went up at the Hilltops. Our concern was, and there was no way that we have any way of knowing, that changes and problems and issues originating within the comm center themselves, they are, of course, magnified and amplified all the way up into the Hilltop and out.
Well, I'll stop you right there.
All right.
If you go through those bills, and anything there that you think is even slightly suspicious, you take it to Frank Scarberry, and if Frank Scarberry will tell you that that problem resulted because of something in my console, then I'll reimburse you for it.
Well, now,
Is that not,
all right.
is that not fair?
Well, Alan, yeah, but that's a one-sided event, okay? And I'll tell you why I won't fall for that one, okay? First off, Frank Scarberry wasn't there when something may or may not have been done in the comm center that originated the call. He only knows that there was something wrong at the Hilltop. No one in this world is capable of doing what you just put the challenge out. So, like I said,
Well, I'm just telling you
that's
that if there's
good, but
anything-
that's the pea in the shell game, Alan.
No, if there's
Yeah.
anything there that you have a question on and you think that's an issue, that's
Right.
fine. But you also have to consider that over the last 2 years, your radio system is older than it ever was in the first year. So any system that you look at, whether it's a fire truck or a cardiac or a heating and air conditioning system at the courthouse, the maintenance costs for years 5, 6, and 7 are going to be higher than years 1, 2, and 3. So you're absolutely right. But when a fuse blows in a power supply, like it did at the Samarico site, and it was completely obliterated, and we had to send the power supply back to be repaired, and the single power supply cost $950 to be repaired. we also need to sit back and look at, okay, the system is this much older, and if you are spending more, and if it's something that we've done, then we'll address that. But I can assure you that we did not adjust levels. We did not change any levels in the console, turn any screws, solder any wires, or anything with the old system. We did not have the technical expertise that we have on the system that we have now. Now, I will assure you that when we installed the current radio system, the current radio consoles that we have, and I gave Mr. McCann a brief overview of what it looked like, how it all came together. When we installed that system, we knew that it had to be fixed. And I sat down and I looked at what it was going to cost to get someone in here to install it. And it was going to cost $12,000 to get someone from the console manufacturer to install that console. The option was I can get someone from the console manufacturer to install it, or I can field train and send someone to certification school. I went, and the certificate's here in my stack if anybody wants to see it. I sent Chris Terry to the school to be certified, and I had one other person that resides within this county that is an employee of the Board of Education that we can use on contract labor if Chris and I happen to be out of town as a backup. We have only started changing those levels and making those adjustments on the console end since the end of January. So turning screws, making adjustments, and doing all of that prior to the middle to the end of January has nothing to do, we made no changes, worked on nothing. But I can assure you that the issue when you and Chris had your disagreement over the phone over turning screws and making adjustments last week, it was a box, and I showed you the box. It was a box that has 2 screws in the back, and you stick the screwdriver in it and you turn it to adjust the level. I'm not sure that you'll ever find a certified person that's certified on that piece of equipment. It's extremely simple, and I am sure that half the people in this room could go down there and raise the level when a technician on the phone tells them that that's the problem and it needs to be adjusted. We saved bringing an electronics company out of Huntington into the 911 center to raise a level after they told us that was what the problem was. We saved somebody some significant money.
That's not the case.
So
That's absolutely not the case, Al.
What is the issue? I've
Okay.
lost.
Our question in is the issue that we discussed was that we had center employees that were making adjustments and setting levels and such, performing tasks that adversely affect the operation of the hilltops for which we were maintaining. What it did was it caused a technician, radio technician vendor to be called out, go to the hilltop to make adjustments or whatever had to be done as a result, we felt, of actions being initiated within the comm center. That's where the circuit and the communication begins. Any changes made there comes all the way to the hilltop. Now, what Alan is so eloquently attempting to swerve here, the fact is the radio technician was called out. The radio technician was in the comm center, and the radio technician told me on the phone that someone had turned the levels down all the way on the Samarico link. He said that it was not like that when...
And is that not the bill that I took back?
I
The bill
don't
that I
know.
took care of?
I'm just
Mr.
saying that
Hudson,
it's
is that not the bill that I
happened.
took back and took responsibility for?
Al,
Okay, thank you.
I just,
But it is obviously happening, and we don't know how much. That is why, and I wanted to let you know, this association has taken steps to guard against those types of activities happening to our equipment from here on out. If someone does perform work on it that is not approved by us, then they just took financial responsibility for the repair. We put that in writing to the director. That equipment is property of ours. Well, it's property of the county, but we are right now charged with the maintenance and the upkeep of it. So we're putting some controls in place, and like I said, we've got to protect ourselves. We got $4,500 worth of bills in 3 weeks. the last 3 weeks of the console install, our maintenance bills went to where we got $4,500 in invoices in 3 weeks, and that is astronomical. It's way outside the norm than what we would have, and we can only assume that it is being predicated right there in the concept.
Well, that may be. I think again, we gotta go back to Lincoln County. We got a bunch of people with different responsibilities, but still all, seems to me like, trying to figure out how can we improve our communication this time in a technological sense. How can we make these apparatus work? And it seems to me like what little Alan showed me there today, which when I was looking at it, I didn't tell him that, it reminded me of my garage door return up down to get it adjusted right. But it seems like it somewhere, we got towers out here on Samarico, Harts, Hamlin. But we also got a comm center out here that all this runs through. Now, there's going to have to be some level of cooperation. I think it's going to have to be a high level of cooperation and trust, or we're just going to be playing games about pointing fingers who's to blame. Now, if I don't know how to resolve that. I don't think I can. I think that's a manly resolution between the people who are involved. They're going to have to say a certain amount of responsibility lies out here, some of it lies out here, but the two has to work together. We're not going to solve the problem. And our desire is to resolve the issues and help you solve the problem any way we can. Knowing we can't do it all at one time, but I think I wouldn't want us to leave here tonight thinking that we've got Alan sitting at 911, maybe with some of his people working out there, that's going to, I wouldn't want to think that you'd believe as a fire association that anyone out there would turn and screw deliberately cause you a problem. Not saying that it might cause a problem, but I don't think that the intent would be to try to help. And I think at the same way that you're all's in, you're concerned about having high-level communication pieces that work like they're supposed to work and not be destroyed by someone else. When I hear that, it bothers me that we don't have that much trust in one another and we're all in the same boat, communicating on, as Jason said so well, there's no price really to put on somebody's life in our communities that we would either jeopardize or toy with any piece of a communication that would hurt us. What we want to do is get the best and make it work to save lives or improve lives, whatever those things are. But we can't point fingers and say, you know, we can talk about it, but we don't want to blame people. What I think we should all do is say, if we got a problem, let's talk about how we can resolve it jointly. Because sitting here as a county commissioner, I think that's our job, is to work together. We don't agree on all things, but we have to work together for the county. So whatever those things are, and we know humans, we differ, we get up every day of the week, it is, how testy we get sometimes, but when all said and done, what is our job? Why are you guys as a fire department giving all your time to help your community? Why is Alan started out back there volunteering fire department, and now he's into a job that he loves? Well, all those things are good, but they're not good if we don't have the right frame of mind as we carry them out every day. And that frame of mind has to be, how can we cooperate and lay down our differences and get the job done? Because one person can't do this job. We got people involved at both ends. It's got to take a level of cooperation. Now, somewhere you've got to leave here thinking about, do I have a responsibility or am I going to run from that responsibility? And I'm talking to everybody. That we can't do that. We have to, if we didn't do it right the other day, I don't know. If we didn't, let's get it right. But if you think you did, double check yourself. Whatever those things are, but let's don't muddy the water. Let's make it work, whatever that is. I mean, we'll never agree on everything. But I think everybody in this room would feel disheartened, or they'd feel extremely proud, according to how well our communication works. You could be heartbroken if it didn't work, or you could be very proud if you're able to get the right communication out there and save somebody's life, or just improve somebody's life. I mean, that's what we're all about, what we're talking about here. But I don't want us to get too mean-natured about it, where that we can't help one another, whether it be Alan, or it be Chris, or it be me, or anyone else. In a situation like this, we have to put the best foot forward and the best person forward, and take that responsibility. We may even fool ourselves. Because some of us sometimes get bogged down with the issues and forget what our responsibilities are. Our responsibilities, I said, is to work together and provide the best communication under any emergency situation. Now, if Alan's not doing his job, we're going to hear about it again from you guys. You're going to let me know, I'm sure. If some of you guys don't do your job, I'm sure Alan's going to let me know. But what I want to do is us keep this dialogue going and see if we can't work together as adults for the benefit of our county. And maybe, you know, Thomas and I talked a little bit a while ago, maybe we should have a meeting every month. I know you get me to death, but maybe we, as a commission, maybe we should say, let's get back together on a monthly basis until we feel like we've resolved these issues. Because I don't want it to die down and say, well, we've talked about, you know, that's it. No, I know how things are. Everybody's got their plate full, and sometimes more. But if these things, you know, are important enough, and I believe they are, you wouldn't have came to the other commission meeting, you wouldn't be here tonight, you wouldn't express yourself as you have if they're not important to you. So we have to figure out some way to make it work and resolve it. And this commission, is, you know, money's not the answer. We can help. We happen to have some coal money, and we're willing to put that out here and help. But money doesn't buy happiness and doesn't buy results. What people do makes the results. If we can't do it as individuals, they're going to just come back to the commission. You guys are just going to have to get out there and you know, have a slugfest. Well, that's not going to make a good Lincoln County. We can't just do that. What we got to do is figure out, it's important enough, you got me convinced, it's important enough to be here. It's important enough to have a special meeting of the commission to talk about this. It's important enough to listen to the issues and resolve them. But we're talking about it, just not enough. We have to make a commitment somewhere. Once the issues are laid out and we try to come up with some solutions, somewhere, then people have to take that step forward and say, I'm willing to, let's work on it, I'll do my part, and you do your part. And that's all we can do. And I think we have to keep that in front of us. Otherwise, we just get, you know, we get too human and we get too nasty sometimes. But this is not one of those times. This is the time that everybody in this room believes in what we're talking about. Doing good for your community and saving people's lives and things like that. And we just got to do that. I mean, I don't know how to get it done, but I know it needs to be done. And I'm willing to try to help do anything I can. I know Mr. Ramey and Mr. Vance is too. But we just got to, you guys got more answers than I've got. But I do know that by sitting here as a commissioner, I have a responsibility to try to help resolve issues that affect the people that love the county as much as I do. So we just got to think about what can we do. And maybe tonight we've heard a lot of things. I know I'll go home and think about all kinds of things through the night, get up in the morning and still be thinking about it. I may not have the answers, but I'll analyze it better than I can sitting here tonight, trying to think and trying to talk and trying to listen and all this. Somewhere we've got to be able to, we've heard an awful lot, we've got one or two more little things to talk about. But let's see if we can just approach it in a more positive way, and I think most of the meetings been that way. I just sometimes pick up a little bit of negativity. And that's all right to get it out there, but it can't stay.
Mr. McCann, please, our concern, and that we were not accusing Alan or anyone else of doing anything wrong. Our concern was, when we looked at it last week, in a 6-week period, we had gotten hit with $4,500 worth of bills. If 6 weeks from now, if something isn't done to turn it, 6 weeks from now, now we're at $8,000 worth of bills in a matter of a month and a half, there's not going to be a penny left in the entire association treasury for the next 2 years to pay that if that trend continues. We don't know how long that was our concern. If we're doing and making bad decisions up there that are amplifying, it's got to get under control. Not saying I'm not going to let it get turned into, I said, or she said, against one of the county employees. I said my piece on that, and it's done. But the concern is the dollars, and if they add up quicker than we can put the money into it, someone's going to have a problem. We won't have the money to pay them. The vendor's going to want paid.
And that's a very legitimate concern.
And believe me, that's the.
If I was in the same situation, I would be concerned too. The only thing that I want to add is I got a chance to review the policy prior to the meeting. It lists myself, F&L Electronics, Motorola Corporation, and Runyon Sunoco as the only approved vendor and repair technicians. That's well and good, but here's my issue with that. I want you to take this, consider it, think about it, and you can bring it back to me with modification. Bring it back to me and tell me it stands as it is. It's not really going to hurt my feelings. But for the last probably 5 years, every month, someone from the 911 center, and it was primarily a gentleman that was very disappointing that he left us, went to every single tower site. He took a Snap-on battery tester that we bought from Runyon Sunoco, and we tested the strength of that battery, making sure that that battery would be there in the event of a power failure that was necessary. And we did that at every single tower site to make sure that your system worked properly. Now, we never asked for anything in return. We bought the battery tester. It was to our benefit that your system worked in a power failure. It was to everybody's benefit in the county that it worked. But with this change in policy, the only person that it allows that works for this county to put a battery tester and test whether a battery's got 12 volts plus on it is myself. And just an hour ago, we talked about my need to be in the office and be an administrator. I don't need to be the only one going out and putting a battery tester on a tower site to test it. That policy needs to either be reviewed or maybe someone else needs to step forward that you're all comfortable with, if that's something that you want to look at. But I feel that those batteries need to be tested monthly, and quite frankly, for me to go out to every tower site and do that on a monthly basis is something that sometimes my time just doesn't permit. And that's something I have never done. And I don't think that whether it's Francis or Chris or Geneva or Daryl Ennis, you know, here's a man that worked at the service department at a dealership. If you're not comfortable with the people that's been doing it up till now, you know who works for me. Find somebody, go to the tower site with them, get comfortable, certify them so that they meet whatever guidelines that you want so that I can assign somebody to do that. I don't care who it is, but all I'm saying is I've got to have enough leeway, because that's something that's, I'd say there's probably not a handful of other 911 centers in the state that go to their towers, or someone goes to the tower and tests that battery every month. But I feel that it's very important that we've got lives on the line, that those batteries work when the power goes off. So all I'm saying is, look at that policy and think about it. And we need to make sure that we've got enough people to handle the situation when it's necessary.
All you would have to do is ask that one of them, and it's right in the policy, if you read it, you would see that it can be granted temporarily on the spot till the last meeting. We don't know who you use.
Well, that's all I'm saying is,
Yeah,
let's
we do
talk
know-
about
we
it,
do know
let's
who you
review
use.
it.
We know you're over there, we know who Alan Holder is, but we don't know who you had running around the towers. I attempted to find out today, but by the time I could get a name. that
Okay,
was
that's
already
fine.
printed.
So what you're
Yeah.
saying is, this is a draft, don't go home, be upset,
Well,
we'll work on it.
It was what we knew,
Okay, that's
Okay.
fine with me then.
but we
And
don't
like I
know
said-
everybody you call, we don't know everybody that works for you, we just say we need to know who's doing the work.
When we do this line status chart thing, that should be a footnote.
But I really
Bingo.
think that we need to make sure that it's 2 or 3 people deep so that, you know, and granted, yes, you can offer us approval at the last moment. But I don't want to have to call Johnny or you or somebody else and say, okay, I can't make it to the Harts Tower today. I need somebody to check the batteries. I want to make sure that we have some assigned people to do that. That's a service that I want to provide to you and the sheriff, and I think it's necessary, but I don't want to be the one doing it, that's all I'm saying.
Okay, Mr. Ennis?
Well, I was just gonna ask Jim if it was all right if he felt confident, and I'll take the task of checking the batteries once a month. I've worked on your fire trucks, and you feel me confident to test batteries?
Oh, I don't think there's any problem with that, Darrell. I think y'all are missing the point of the
No, I just,
policy.
well, I mean,
The
I'm just saying, I
policy is
volunteered
to
to go.
establish a vendor list of who's going to be up there performing work for which someone else has to pay the bill. Some measure of accountability.
vendor on
Right.
I just wanted to make sure that we discussed
Well,
that.
Alan's
And
got, I think Alan covered that.
Yeah, I mean, all he has to do is tell us the names
Yeah.
and we can add them.
I would like to add Darrell to that list, if you don't
All
care.
right.
Well, and all this, I want it in writing. I want everything spelled out. Okay, is there anything else on that we've covered? I think the communication already is on the list.
Just, please let me clarify here, Al. Excuse me. We're having some communication issues, and you believe that our current problem, that we're having problems with dispatch and communication, the majority of that lies, the primary issue is some sort of node between the new consoles and your UHF. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and you believe in a couple of weeks that that'll be cleared up. The secondary issue is the UHF links themselves.
That's
Some lack
correct.
of overlap. So are you aware of anything else that causes the, really, I mean, our communications are really in a tough spot right now, radio wise. I have a whole lot of difficulty, I'm sure you're aware of some of those. But is there anything else you're aware of that would have
I still have some personal concerns with the antenna system that I think Jim does too. He feels that the antenna over at Samarico might be a little higher than we want it to be. Too high. It's at 200 feet, about 180. He wants to try something a little lower. I'm more than willing to try that. But I think before we go out and change antenna systems, change antennas and look at coax, all the equipment says it's okay. Let's get these other issues resolved before we go out and spend a whole bunch of time or money or effort. Because we may end up fixing the problem and not know which thing fixed it. Is that fair?
Well, we'll work on this, but it's not over. We need to stay on it, and see if we may find out something else not working right.
And I will make a commitment to work on a quarterly or some type of newsletter that we can spit out emergency services wise what we're doing. We've done a lot this past year, guys, and it upset me to think that people think we're sitting on the hill just twiddling our thumbs. Because most of the times, we don't have time to do anything. Very much free time. So all I'm saying is, I've been very lax and not sitting down and informing everybody of what we're doing. And I'm trying to do a better job. If it means taking an email or calling somebody and trying to keep you informed on what's going on, that's what we'll do. And we'll establish a newsletter or something to that effect. But we'll do an attempt to do that to try to get some grant funding. And the website that we have is not adequate, and the website we have I don't have anybody on staff that I either want to or
Mr.
feel
Mosto
like
volunteering something.
to take care of
I
doing
do
that.
web design, I'll volunteer. Free of charge.
Well, it's gonna have to be a web design that gives us a lot of functionality. And if you wanna bid on a project and wanna look at it or discuss it with me, I'm more than willing to do that.
Yeah.
So, and I appreciate the offer. The other thing that we've got a lot accomplished this year, guys, with our ID card system, with our accountability, with everything. And it's only because of your all support financially and within spirit that we've been able to do that. And I've got one item that once we're finished with everything on the agenda, I just want to make everyone here aware of, because it's easier to do it here than to pick up the phone and
Okay.
call.
Is there anything else on the last thing I had down was input on emergency conditions, planning, talking about, we touched on it, about floods and all that. Are we going to be able to figure that'll come into as we develop our plan and all that, or is some particular?
The planning part.
Okay. Anything else from anyone? The
Yeah.
last items, other issues?
Commissioner, I met with Alan the other day, and something we discussed about was communication, and that's what this entire meeting's being caused of, is lack of communication. And I suggested to him that it be worked out to where, such as, I just threw these names out, Chris, Alan, or Francis, somebody that's more technical will start coming to our association meetings, and it don't take relying on Jim or Johnny because they have enough to do. If they had their own employee there, just to be nothing more, if it was just a liaison, to take back the information and talk to Alan one-on-one, or Geneva even. But this entire meeting has been caused by lack of communication.
I agree.
And I talked to Geneva today about helping me with that.
So I agree. I mean, if we can figure something out, because the communication out of 911 is completely different than what's out here. But both, they have to meet somewhere.
Well, we're all volunteers, and we got our own family life and our own work life that we got to do. And, you know, it's a matter of 2 to 4 hours that someone's going to be there. And I just felt that, you know, a representative from the 911 center should be at our association meetings, and they may be able to answer a lot of these questions that we already have.
Well, and again, it just opens up that communication.
Well, I talked to Geneva, and Geneva will tell you, I talked to her about that in great detail. Unfortunately, my schedule, and I think that several of you have indicated that you want me to stay there in that position, but I serve on one state committee that we start a meeting on Monday morning, and it goes until late Monday night, and then the meeting goes until sometimes late in the afternoon on Thursday or Tuesday. And the last thing I'm in a position to do after being gone for 2 days, then drive right back in here and go to association meeting and be gone at 10 o'clock. It doesn't happen every time, but about 1 out of every, about 50% of the time, it falls on my IWG meeting, and it's difficult for me to make it back.
Right.
It's very critical to this county and this region that I be on that committee that governs the state radio system.
And that's the reason I suggested
So
someone.
I talked to Geneva about doing that very thing, and maybe she won't have the answers to everything at that meeting.
But they
and
can
I
bring them
doubt-
back to you.
But she can bring them back, and we'll get you an answer back by next month. The
Well-
only thing that I ask is that if you have a problem, some of these problems you brought to me, some of these problems were new, and I found out about it when I watched the video from the Lincoln Journal. We have problems all the time among ourselves, and the best way to handle those problems is going to people face to face and handling those problems, and not letting those meetings be brought up in public and airing our differences. And, you know, there's been 3 or 4 of you that I've called and said, hey, we got a problem with this, I got a call from the state, or I got a call from this, we need to deal with this, we need to deal with that. You wouldn't want me going to the commission and airing your all's laundry in public, and if you've got a problem, all I'm asking you is, give me a chance, give Geneva a chance to correct that problem before we air our dirty laundry in front of a bunch of people. And especially when there's a video camera on all of us. You know, not only are we dealing with the Lincoln Journal newspaper, we're dealing with the Lincoln Journal and their video archives and everything now. Everything we say is not out there for one time. It's out there for eternity.
Way to go, Sean.
So, but that's the job of the press. All I'm saying is that as fellow human beings,
when we have a problem with one another, if you've got a problem with me, don't go to 3 or 4 fire chiefs before we get everybody worked up. Come to me and let's talk about it. Let's have a problem. And let's sit down and work on what we can to do together, and I promise you I'll do the same. And Jim and I sat down talked last night, and I think Jim and I are even gonna try to do it. We might have to really force ourselves to sit down and do it with each other.
Who is the Fire Association have somebody as their communication person?
It's Jim, let's face
Well, I
it.
mean, I just want, well,
Jim is more email person and he can contact. Jim is more email person and he can contact.
I know he puts a lot of time into work, and I'm just thinking that it wouldn't really take, what Alan says, might not be a bad idea, that Alan's a paid employee, that we ask him on a monthly basis to pick up the phone himself and call whoever that's going to be and say, what's going on? Is there some issues we need to talk about? And that would solve a lot of the communication issues, I think. So we just need to make sure of that.
At the same time, I invite the county commission to come and sit in on our association meetings on the second Tuesday of the month, and that way you all know a little bit better what's going on. First Tuesday, so it's first Tuesday of the month.
First Tuesday.
We invite you all to come in and sit in, and that way we can better communicate with you all.
Yeah, I've used to do a few of them, haven't recently. First Tuesday.
Meetings rotate. Where's your next meeting? Dr.
Meeting.
Commissioner Vance asked where the meeting.
It was just at Harts Creek, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was at Harts last month, it'll be at Allen Creek, and then it rotates down through the
It'll be in
numbers.
Allen Creek for the
Just
next
makes a
meeting.
circle throughout the county.
That's the first Tuesday, is that what that says?
Yes.
Yes.
At 6, 7, time. Okay.
What type of time frame, you give me a time frame when we get the console work out there, probably 10 days. But now the microwave, what type of time frame do you anticipate getting that thing up and running? You're ordering parts tomorrow, so
We could have one of the tower sites, and I'll leave that choice up to you all, whether it be the Samarico Tower site or whether it be the Hamlin Tower site, on the microwave system in 10 days or less.
whether, which sites?
Hamlin or Samarico. You vote Hamlin, and Jim votes Samarico.
Which one are we having the most trouble out of?
Well, in my opinion, it's not because of where I live either, but in my opinion, I would like to see Samarico there first, primarily because the Samarico Tower is a unique animal all in of itself, is that we use function tones and control tones to change the channel on that base station, where the other sites, that is not a function or a critical thing, and that will work much better in that scenario. I think it'll solve more problems by bringing that site up first than it will the others.
I think you're just trying to.
No, I'm not just trying to tease him. But that's truly my opinion. I think we can do that within 10 days, but until I get on the phone with our vendor and place that order, the microwave dishes are big, they come in on a truck, they come in on a skid. Until I get those ordered and find out what the delivery time on that, I could guess and tell you something and it might be wrong. But
Now, if you can bring one of those two towers up in 10 days, could you not still bring up the Hamlin Tower also on microwave within the month or something and use the existing UHF as your backup for that?
Sure, we could do that, but if that microwave system fails before that redundancy is put in place, then we lose Hamlin and Samarico simultaneously and the sheriff's office, okay? Then we have to pick up the phone and call a vendor out of Huntington to come down and put the UHF link back in place and re-engineer what we've undone. I don't think that's a good idea.
You mean to take UHF out?
No, I don't think it's a good idea to do that until the rest of the microwave's in place with the redundant hot.
Yeah, I agree too.
I would like that too, but until I'm afraid we'll get egg on our face if we do that.
Okay, anything else? Jim?
Commissioners, I think this meeting is good, and I do truly appreciate the time each and every one of you is here to attempt to facilitate improvement for the whole county. But there seems to be some misunderstanding, and since it's coming back at me, I would like to clarify. My opinion is that Lincoln County is very fortunate to have Alan Holder in this position he's in. Alan Holder is probably one of the most competent, most capable people that you could ask for to be in that job. Okay. The only issues that have been brought up is come back around. I'm only trying to bring stuff up because I want his job. Gentlemen, I have no desire for that. I'm a journeyman electrician. What in the world would I want a part-time county job for? Okay, so that's not the driving force here. The driving force here is to get Alan to do the job that we would all like to have done, and we want to help him accomplish that. And that is what we're here about.
Oh, I agree.
It's nothing personal. I have no desire, no motives, no nothing.
Well, I mean, I take it as that all of us, on occasion, I say all of us, but maybe there are exceptions, but usually all of us, sometimes slow down, sometimes some of us get lax in our responsibility. Sometimes we take on more than we can really get done as well as should be done. And in a job like Alan, yeah, I agree with you. We're fortunate to have you here in the county. But I know that his responsibilities at home, his responsibilities at church, his responsibilities with his job in Charleston, with his responsibilities to Lincoln County, there's no doubt that he is human and he has got more than he can handle probably. I told him on the phone the other night, I said, you know, as I look at it, we have outgrown whatever it was we started to do about 10 years ago, trying to improve and trying to get us a new facility and all that. That we reached the point where that really, that whether it be OES or whether it be the 911 emergency, it's really tough to keep going the way we are as a part-time person out there, as Alan's trying to do. But I don't like to think about it at this juncture, what would we do if he wasn't out there? But it is a big job, lots of responsibility, and it's to the point where that I think I look at it and I appreciate you guys for the job you do, but I appreciate you bringing the issues up. I think it'd be sad for us to sit up here and think that everything was fine when it wasn't. So I took it the other day when I listened to it. This is important. We better get on it. That's why as soon as I got home, got on the computer and sent Alan these information. I said, we've got to deal with this. This is important. We're going to take an agenda and we're going to work through it. But I wouldn't want anybody to leave here not thinking that Jim, by helping, what would be the good word, instigate or whatever it might be, that bring these things to the table. They need to be. And no doubt everybody in here thinks that. Even Alan thinks that. He just doesn't agree maybe how we go about it. I may not agree how we go about it. But the issue is communication has been so put forth here. We just got to say, well, we're at a juncture, let's do something about it. Let's improve. And I think that we should never, any of us, leave here tonight with any hard feelings about anything. I think it's been fruitful. I think it's been good. I just, like Alan said, maybe people, you know, I've been in the public sector so long that it doesn't bother me to wash your laundry out in public. Now, it hurts my family sometimes to see things that go on or whatever, or something I might say or do. But it's really a public issue and public business that needs to be conducted in public. Now, there's things that don't need to be maybe because of feelings and things like that. But, you know, we need to do what we can in the public, good open, do what we can to discuss it. I think it helps let people know how serious you guys are about the business that you do. I think it lets me know how well you do it, lets me know how well Alan does it, people work for Alan, how well the county commission reacts to it. I think it's good. It's just sometimes maybe we're not big enough to take it because it does step on our toes sometimes, but that's part of it. If you work in the public, you should expect that. And sometimes we just have to tell ourselves that. But I just think I really think it's great that we took time out or whatever schedule we had here, plan to do this day and come here tonight and work on these issues. I don't think there's anything more important that we could have done. I mean, we could have had something else going on, but I think as far as Lincoln County is concerned, I think I appreciate everybody coming forward. I appreciate Alan being open with the discussions, and I just certainly glad that we've done this and that we continue to try to stay on top of it and us keep it going. Let's make sure that we do our meetings, make sure that we come back and talk about the issues. I still think that Alan should pick up and call whoever's going to be the communication person, not only attend the meetings, but call the communication person in the Fire Association. And what's going on? Is there any issues on your end? Here's issues on my end. So we keep that going. Otherwise, I'd be disappointed we can't do that. I think it's important. That's because we're here because we haven't been doing that. So if we know that, let's don't drop the ball again. Maybe something else next time, but communications. Anything else? I know Alan said something else he wanted to add.
I do appreciate tonight's meeting in a lot of ways. I think that I could have probably come to the commission and asked for help with the microwave system. Mr. Campbell looked at me and said, there he is, won't spend more money.
I would have said, don't you have any money?
So I think because of this meeting, because of the dialogue, when it's all said and done, there's going to be a lot of good things happening. And I respect every one of you, and I appreciate those comments, Jim. And like I said, whether I want to be your friend again. That's all I'm saying. That's where we started, and I don't know why I worked away from that. We need to work toward that, and I'll say that other one. Now, besides that, one other thing on another note, you all had asked for some training, and so we talked about the ID cards and how all that was going to pull into emergency management. There was some extra money available in the training line item for last year's Homeland Security money, and we were able to write a grant to develop a course to do that. And I've got a gentleman that has agreed to help with the establishment of a course and a training program for all of our agencies on how to use the ID card system and how that works into incident management and how that works into incident accountability for us. And I'm not asking him to teach a class to everybody. I'm asking him to meet with everyone, to be a facilitator at the meeting, find out what you all want from the class and from the program, and then develop a course that meets the needs of Lincoln County. So part of the responsibilities that he's been tasked with is meeting with everybody a couple of times, developing a course which we will send out in draft form several times, and then between April and May, taking that course into the field and delivering it 8 to 10 times. And that means at your all's fire departments, if you all want him to develop that course and show that. In addition to the accountability cards that you all are using, the Sheriff's Department and the courthouse employees have been brought on board with that. Tri-River Transit has been brought on board with that, and several other county agencies have been brought on board to do that. The only thing that I want, and I think all of you want, is that however we use the cards in one end of the county, we use the cards in the exact same format and fashion somewhere else. And here is a notice that basically states when we're going to do the meeting and who we want to be involved. Like I said, it's purely informational and a meeting to call everybody together and try to develop this course that will suit your all's needs. And I'll put the notice here. The gentleman that came forward and offered to do this for us is a National Fire Academy instructor and has been traveling the country over the last couple of years teaching classes of this nature to firefighter survival, firefighter accountability, and he also has a volunteer background as a former volunteer chief. So I think he'll be able to relate with you all, and like I said, it's not to push anything on you, but to have him do the PowerPoint slides, develop the coursework based upon your all's recommendations. And then once it's done, then we'll have a set of PowerPoints and a set of outlines that we can give to you all, that you all can use when you train new people. Put together. So here's just basically a notice on that, and we schedule a tentative meeting for, well, week after next. We've got a 2 o'clock meeting scheduled for the people that are daytime people, and then we've got an evening meeting scheduled the exact same time, exact same day, to accommodate you all. So there'll be 2 options within the same day to attend the meeting and do that. And then once he starts, huh?
What's the children's?
It's actually Kenny Klein. And Kenny's very, very good with being able to put the course together, and has been doing a lot of teaching, and I think he'll be able to put the course together and give us what we need.
Where's that gonna be at, Alan?
The course, the actual preliminary, we'll call it a stakeholders meeting, will be at the 911 center. And we'll go from there. We'll have some refreshments, so if you come that night, we'll at least give you something to drink and something to eat that night. And,
Better be done tonight, isn't it? If I know it's gonna be this long, we might have had something to drink.
You know, at this time, you know, it's obvious there's a renewed spirit of cooperation between everybody, and the communication lines, I believe, now will be open. A special thank you is extended to each of you. Everybody here acted as professionals. You are professionals in what you do. The county's lucky to have you, and I would make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
There's second, motion and second for adjourn, doesn't mean you gotta leave. We're just adjourned at 8:45. Thank you.
Tomorrow evening?